Hello again, friends! And you are our friends unless you work on creative during one of the Fiend's matches. And welcome back to another edition of Jimcornet's Drive Thru, right here wherever you are on this beautiful Tuesday. It's springtime. We hope you're enjoying the weather, and you're about to enjoy this drive-thru. Of course, your questions will be answered. Questions sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru or via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com, plus a review of WWE Fastlane. And of course, the man who will be answering your questions and doing this review, the leader of the cult of Cornette, Mr. Jimcornet.
It remains to be established whether or not you are indeed my friend. You know, like you said, spring has sprung. Beautiful weather yesterday at the castle. The Monroe brothers, Alf and Ralph, out in the yard, hard at work on the castle grounds all day. They're going over everything with a fine-tooth comb. It was a beautiful evening. I slept with the window open a crack because even though it got chilly outside at night, still I got the fresh air. And this morning I wake up to the sound of the birds chirping. The sun peeking over the hills and the trees. And it's another wonderful day. I go to the post office. I ship an incredible amount of packages. Bree says, hey. I come back. The Monroe brothers are already at work. And I sit down to do what you, my friend, and you used to be my friend, what you had asked me to do. You said, oh, Jim, oh, we got to watch Fastlane. Oh, the fans want to hear what you have to say about Fastlane.
Well, that's it. I'm a conduit between you and the fans. It's not about what I want.
You're something that sounds like conduit. All the letters are there. They just may be rearranged a little bit differently. You're a one-syllable conduit. Figure that one out, kids. And I went from soon the dogwoods will be in bloom to I loathe you.
Well, once again, I am a man of the people. I represent what the audience wants to hear, and I try to push you towards, hey, watch this, look at this, talk about this. It's not about what I want. I don't want to watch this crap. Because of you watching it, I had to watch it too. And it sucked. Except for the main event. It was your fucking
idea, Pally. And besides that, I can't believe that any of their audience really wanted to watch that, much less any of our audience really wanted to watch that or have us watch it.
It wasn't my idea. It was Vince's.
All right, we'll get to that later on. But I just want you to know that I was in a very spring festive mood. For people who say, well, he's always grumpy. It's because we seem to do these programs right after I've been forced to watch what passes for professional wrestling in this day and age. So, of course, after being under duress like that, one would tend to be a bit of a raw nerve end. But before, this is your show, Brian, but I don't mean to just take over, but before you start with this interrogation about this crime that was committed over the airwaves, I want to be more positive and thank everyone for the cameo on sale yesterday as we speak. It was Sunday, the 21st at noon. This time they lasted for 8 minutes. 52 of them got by before Hotchkiss Featherbottom could manually turn off the deal because he's a little slow. And also, it's hard for him to jump up and down with the weight of that bracelet on his ankle. After they found out that his cousin got the last one off, is just he's going to look like he's going to look like he's only been doing leg presses with one leg. Anyway, so we sold the cameos, and for those of you who got through. Thank you very much. For those of you who tried and didn't, thank you even more, because I hate we couldn't fulfill it. But we will be filling these on this coming Thursday. What's that? March 25th. So watch your phones, folks. Keep watching the skies and your phones for the cameos. And as far as an on-sale date for the next ones, it's probably going to be 3 or 4 weeks before we can do any more, because we got the action figures coming up and Stacy's back surgery is April 5th. And we're trying to get some things done before that time. So as far as the jimcornet.com orders update, if you have ordered merchandise, as I said, we shipped a bunch of packages this morning. Almost everything through last Thursday is on its way. A few more will go out on Wednesday morning, along with a bunch of stuff that was ordered over the weekend. And what we're going to do is everything that is ordered through this Friday, March 26th, when the action figures go on sale, I'm going to fill those first, so you guys don't have to worry about getting lost in the action figure chaos. Anything comes in before we put the figures on sale, we're going to fill that over that weekend and get that out by the first and the middle of next week. And then the figures will start shipping probably about 7 days after they go on sale. And so I would please allow 2 to 3 weeks at least before you start getting nervous and feel like you've been porch pirated. That's jimcornet.com. You know what's going on. I'm not going to be able to handle it anyway, so I'm not going to sell the products anymore. But just have mercy on the poor, lone, old, middle-aged, almost elderly man in Kentucky trying to do this by himself. Almost especially elderly. After I've been, well, I'm trying to get sympathy here. I'm trying to get sympathy when I want to sound like I'm still in the fit of condition, I'll say I'm middle-aged. When I want to get sympathy, I'm almost elderly. And I've been mentally tortured of late because of things that I've been made to see that I'll never be able to unsee.
Well, I assume you're referring to the WWE pay-per-view extravaganza, Fastlane.
Actually, what did I call it before we went on the air? I said, I've got the review here of Speed Trap.
That's right.
Because there was nothing fast about most of this. Well, all right, do you want to start at the beginning? I can't start at the beginning, and neither can you, because you tuned in late and I skipped ahead.
Yeah, I'm so used to in the past wrestling pay-per-view starting at 8 o'clock that whenever they start at 7, I always forget. So I missed the first half hour, and I didn't bother to go back and rewatch it after the fact.
Well, let's talk about this for a second, because you at least had the ability to go back and rewatch it, to go back, rewind it, and watch from the start. But apparently, see, I did the same thing. Well, you were watching it on the network. I just ordered the pay-per-view because I like my fast forward, and I like my couch, and I like the way that the remote feels in my hand, and that's the way I want to watch television. So I don't give a shit. I don't want to sit here and watch my computer screen, and we've talked about the technological issues, but I don't care. What are they doing? So this is the show, and this is the easiest way I can fast forward through, especially their 5-minute entrances, and they would enter in a building with 60,000 people in it quicker than they can get to the ring now in an empty building. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
Anyway, but so you watched the network and I watched the pay-per-view, but some people were watching the Peacock. The Peacock. And is it far enough along for me to say that that's not really the Peacock as much as it is the cock. You take the P out of the cock, and what do you got? Bupkis. Everybody's complaining about the Peacock. Is this what Dave Shearer on PW Insider was talking about? He termed it the cock because it's a classic cock up. You can't. What is this I'm hearing? You can't pause. You can't rewind.
I believe so. Yeah.
You can't. How is this? So they've got people used to the network. Now they're going to take it away from them. They're going to hand it off to the cock. But it doesn't work, or it's not going to work until SummerSlam, or what are you hearing about this?
From what I've heard, just like there are a lot of different programs and a lot of different shows that won't be available until at least the summertime, I heard that a lot of the functionality that people are used to on WWE Network with all the bad things you could say about the network, the functionality is pretty good, I think. And I usually stream it on my computer and then shoot it to the TV if I want to. But you can pause it. You can go backwards. You can go forward. Unless it's a live event, you can't really go forward at that point. But if you had already gone backwards, then you can go forward.
Then you can continue back forwards to where you were.
Right. Back to the Future. Unfortunately, and I checked it out while I was watching it on the network, I put it on Peacock on one of the other monitors in here, and it sucked. You couldn't pause it. Sometimes you want to go to the bathroom and there isn't a shitty match on, and you really have to just say,
No,
I have to hold off on this match for a few minutes.
I haven't experienced that on a big show in a long time, where there wasn't a shitty match on a screen anytime I needed to do anything.
But yeah, Peacock leaving a lot to be desired at this time in the spring of 2021.
So what about the stuff that we actually watch? Not the big shows or the new stuff, but the archives, the old Saturday night TBS shows. Where's that going to be or go?
Reportedly or purportedly, who really knows, eventually it'll all be on Peacock, we think. However, from what I've seen, because someone, I think Mike Mills actually, from Booking the Territory, was talking to me about this, and he sent me a link to some guy on Twitter who was posting everything that was being uploaded to Peacock. And I think the one thing I saw when you bring up the old Saturday night shows, I believe they uploaded most of 93 WCW Saturday Night, but I'm not sure how much before that. They've uploaded, obviously, the big pay-per-view events, but I don't think any Mid-South or Mid-Atlantic is a priority right now. So I think a lot of people who enjoy the archive, enjoy the really good material, may have to sit back and wait or find another source. A lot of this stuff is available elsewhere because obviously it's not a priority to the WWE or the Peacock Masters.
See? Everybody laughed at me for saving my VHSs.
I still have mine.
I've got everything the network's got. No, I don't have that much stuff, unfortunately. And some of it will probably, that's why I said when this whole thing started and they started buying all that stuff, the problem is that we'll never see the vast majority of what they got that we want to see because it's all the old stuff, Florida in the 70s, for fuck's sake. But anyway, we're a long way from Florida in the 70s, possibly even Kansas with this program. So both of us on Fastlane, now that we've established that they're going to screw up at least the one thing that we've liked that they've been doing that we got used to. We both missed the women's tag team title match, you accidentally and me on purpose. So we start out.
The only thing I read about it was that a few people said Bianca Belair was buried. I don't know exactly what happened to her, what that means. Obviously, she's supposed to get a match against Sasha Banks at WrestleMania.
Anymore, it could mean that they actually fucking killed her and buried her. You never know.
With this show, you don't know.
You have to take any description literally these days in this company. I sincerely hope Miss Belair is okay. We send our thoughts and prayers that she gets out of whatever hole they put her in. But we started out with the Intercontinental title match between Apollo Crews and Big E. And I've heard this talked about, but I had not seen it until just now. They have made Apollo Crews a Nigerian warrior carrying a spear.
You know, on John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight Then and Now, like a month ago or a couple months ago, we got to the point in 1990 where Tony Atlas, who was actually a really good heel in ICW, despite it being ICW,
yes,
he was really good. I mean, I wish we had seen more of that on a big stage.
I actually saw some of that. That's why I tried to book him in 1993 as a heel.
He was great. And then Vince re-signed him and made him Saba Simba.
yeah, God, with the giant a headdress that made Wahoo McDaniel's headdress look like a parakeet, right?
Yep.
And here's the modern day fucking modern coming of Spear Chucker Jones. What the fuck? That was MASH, right?
I don't know.
You remember Spear Chucker Jones?
I have no idea what you're talking about, and I'm making the YouTube edit noise just in case.
This was I'm not even, that's not it's a fucking famous goddamn movie character. Oh, for God's sake. Anyway, the point is, in this day and age, and not even, they don't even pretend that he's really a Nigerian guy that's come here from Nigeria and has a Nigerian accent because he's from Nigeria and he's a Nigerian warrior carrying a spear. It's a guy that has already been there that suddenly now is speaking with a Nigerian accent. And I guess, what is that fucking DNA tree, the commercials? He found out he was 72% Nigerian. How did this fucking happen? How do you just take somebody and say, no, you're somebody completely different next week? What the fuck? And how is this getting by? I can't make a 30-year-old chicken joke without people getting fucking losing their shit. And he's got a black guy coming out here with a fucking spear. What the fuck is going on?
Did you ever see him on the indies? I never did, but I remember his name was Uha Nation. Was that what it was? I remember reading it, but I never saw him.
I have no idea what you're... Oh, wait. Was that...
He worked for Gabe.
Okay, I remember seeing that name in print and go, a wrestling guy, a wrestler's name is Uha Nation. I didn't understand that because I'd never seen the person to attach it to the name or the gimmick, understand what the gimmick was or whatever.
Well, I don't believe it was this. I can't imagine it was this.
I can't... I think we would have heard. It would have probably been brought up by now if Gabe Sapolsky had a black guy out there carrying a spear. People, when poor Kamala died, people were like, well, of course that would not ever be able to be allowed today. And he made a fucking career out of it, but this guy's starting from scratch. Anyway. Look up Spear Chucker Jones.
I just did.
So, huh?
I just did. It was Fred Williamson.
There you go. Who was a badass.
Yeah.
All right. So now does it have to be edited off of YouTube?
I don't know because I looked it up.
In context.
I looked it up and everything I'm seeing is Mash was racist. So I don't know. I don't even know how to react to this.
There was the whole fucking idea it was a parody. It's a comedy movie. And it was his fucking nickname because he was the fucking football player and he threw the fucking... Oh, my God. Anyway, there would have been a great fucking gimmick. Spear Chucker Jones could have come in along with T.L. Hopper and the Goon and Freddie Joe Floyd and nobody would have even noticed. Do you know somebody sent me a transcript of just a couple of paragraphs of Bruce Pritchard, bless him, the Artful Dodger, defending this was a modern day interview, not like 20 years ago, but to this day, that the fucking, those horrible gimmicks, 95, 96, the garbage man and the plumber and the fucking poor Freddie Joe and the Goon and all that goofy shit, Duke Drosy, I love the person. God, what a garbage man that comes and brings a garbage can. And he was basically saying he was still defending it. He was saying, oh, well, those guys could wrestle, but we wanted to give them personality so people would care about them. The reason why nobody cared about any of those people is because of the gimmicks that they gave them. And that's the same shit he would say to me in 1996 when I would look at him like he had turds hanging out of his mouth and go, why are you doing this? Why are we doing this to these people? Well, Vince wants to give them a personality or something you can hang your hat on about them. No. The reason why that they were instantly dismissed out of hand as talents that belonged on the top of the card or in any place on the card was because of the ridiculous, fucking overdone, cartoon, stereotyped gimmicks. Gimmicks, I say. Anyway.
That boob is just like a Scientology PR agent. He spurts out such garbage. Like
I thought you were calling Bruce the boob.
I thought calling Bruce the boob. It's just like he's been indoctrinated.
I thought you were talking about if I can't say Spear Chucker Jones, you can't say boob on YouTube.
I can absolutely say boob.
I thought you were talking in the sexual sense, boob.
I could say he's a tit. I mean, I could say either or. But it's just it's like he's been indoctrinated and he's messed up. And I have a problem with you calling him the Artful Dodger.
He's messed up.
I have a problem with you calling him the Artful Dodger. I think that's really disparaging towards the memory of Jack Wilde.
Oh. Hey, points there. Consider yourself.
Consider yourself at home. But now, hey, also, reminder, by the way, reminder, the Artful Dodger got caught by the end. So.
Say again? Oh, yes.
Maybe they'll send Bruce to Australia. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
But anyway, so it was Apollo Crews versus Big E. And it's nice to see grown men having a wrestling match. Big E speared Crews through the ropes where Crews was on the apron, and Big E hit him with a spear. They both went to the floor, and that was nice for guys of that size. But I guess now it's just the presentation and the overall malaise of WWE wrestling, if I can call it that, is just so clean, scrubbed, blood. I mean, once again, they're great athletes. They're all well trained, but does anybody the shows with the things that they put on these shows, as we'll talk about, when guys are trying to have matches, even when they have a good match or they just try to have a good match, it's all ruined when you get to one of the murders or science fiction segments. But in this one, I believe Big E was supposed to be the babyface, but he got some pretty obnoxious heat on the heel for the first part, and then the heel turned the tables, made a comeback on the babyface. Either one of these guys looks good enough, is a good enough athlete, is a good enough worker that they could have worked the territories, they could have been used and been featured. But I'm not talking about these gimmicks. I'm talking about these human beings here. Can you imagine how Bill Watts or Eddie Graham or anybody would have presented fucking either one of these guys? And they wouldn't have had him carrying a spear in the 70s. But former football players and the backgrounds they've got, they would be dressed as half-ass serious motherfuckers, and they would be involved in serious personal issues with other people. But here it's some guys in some fancy outfits doing some stuff, and then suddenly, after a series of awkward kind of reversals that neither one of these guys has the style that they ought to be doing. It's cruiserweight shit. They're fucking go behind, small package, whatever the fuck. Suddenly, Big E got the 3 count, but was it an accident? Was it a fuck up? Was it what they were trying to do, but they did it awkwardly? Or did it look like the referee just counted 3 because the shoulders were down, and then Apollo Crews got up and beat the shit out of the guy that pinned him because that wasn't the finish? All of those things were in play. What do you think?
I think all of those things were in play. I got a kick out of him speaking with the Nigerian accent during the match.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yelling when he was beating the shit out of him afterwards, when he realized that, shit, maybe he was even supposed to have won or something else was supposed to happen. He's yelling at him in the fake Nigerian accent. And I heard somebody say they covered it by that he's paying tribute to his Nigerian ancestry. But if you were pissed off and somebody just stole something from you and beat you in a fight accidentally and you're mad, are you going to affect the tribute accent while you're trash talking them as you're kicking the shit out of them back? What?
By the way, if you're going to make him a Nigerian prince, the name Uha Nation would have been better than Apollo Crews.
No, it should have been the Ha-Ha Nation at this point, because that's all they're going for. Because can we move on? Because I want you to explain to me, is Old Spice now a sponsor?
Well, apparently so. Based on this, this is the first I knew about this.
What in the wide world of sports was that even even if it was a comedy show, it wasn't funny. If it's a sports show, it's not serious. It's not sports. I don't know why anybody would have done this in public. Who was the goof? I don't even know how to describe it. There was a goof, supposed Old Spice salesman, and here comes some Japanese wrestler who I did not recognize because I assume he's one of the NXT guys, maybe?
I think it's Tozawa.
Well, there you go. Tozawa strikes again. I wondered where he'd been. I've lost track of him lately. He comes up, and there's some interplay there, but R-Truth is behind the Old Spice display, but sticks his arm out, so Tozawa grabs it and pulls him through it and knocks the whole thing over, but the Old Spice salesman, in trying to restore the integrity of the Old Spice display, rolls over the top of R-Truth and beats him for the 24/7 title. Is that about what we saw?
About.
So they wonder why that nobody likes this shit anymore. And I wonder why that any of these guys go out there and really injure themselves, hurt themselves, to the very few that go out and try to do their job when everybody that they're working for, everybody in the office, everybody in the production team, everybody in the so-called creative team is literally jacking off in their fucking faces and said, fuck you, go beat yourself black and blue. We're going to have some fun and make everybody hate this phony shit. Bah! And they splooge right all over their fucking nose.
Apparently the Old Spice guy, Joe Average, I believe his name was, is...
That would be a rating I would not bestow on him. He was decidedly below average, but go ahead.
I'm looking at a picture of him here, jacked up. It says on his Twitter account, WWE talent.
What?
Freestyle All-American, Greco, and folk style state champion. Former University of Wisconsin Badgers wrestler.
What?
So this is one of their talent. I've never seen him before. I don't know if he's been used before on their
And
show.
they call him Joe Average, and they made him a buffoon in a comedy spot with Old Spice to introduce him on television.
If this is the same guy, and I believe it is, this guy he's ripped.
You couldn't tell by the clown outfit he was wearing.
No.
And fake nerd glasses. Is this a producer scheme? Is somebody trying to tank this company now that they've got the TV rights thing? What is the purpose of actually doing bad shit nobody wants to see on purpose?
The problem is Vince and some of the mindless minions like a Bruce or a Johnny Ace.
I can't believe
who won't tell him otherwise. Vince thinks that his brand of entertainment is a brand that people will enjoy, not realizing this isn't how people enjoy shit.
I would be shocked and amazed that Vince McMahon even knew what he was getting with this Old Spice. If we had taken 25 years ago something like that to him and said, well, we just did this, watch this, we're going to play it on the pay-per-view, he would have been like one of those old fucking English foxhound motherfuckers with a goddamn crop beating us all over the fucking heads. What's the matter with you people? All right.
You know,
anyway.
WWE tries to do comedy really badly on their shows, but what no one ever really points out is they literally have their own brand of comedy. Now, it's not funny, typically.
Well, that's a good way to differentiate themselves from the others.
But it's unlike any other thing you see on any television show anywhere. It's a unique brand of comedy that sucks, that I don't know who it's supposed to entertain, but it's been years now. I mean, this is a very defined comedy style that Vince McMahon exhibits, and it's awful. And this guy, apparently, his real name is Eric Bugenhagen.
Bugenhagen!
But he's been given the name in NXT of Rick Bugeggs. Or Rick Buggez? Or Rick Bugs. I don't know how to pronounce
God damn.
Bugez.
We can pronounce his real name easier than we can pronounce his fake one. That used to be the opposite. Oh, God damn it. Oh, God damn it. Please let this end. Take me now, Lord. Take me now. So the Battle of the Green Slime, Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon, that we had just talked about on what was the last show we did, The Experience.
And I told you it was slime, it wasn't paint.
Okay. Well, what difference? It's green paint. There's no such thing as green slime. Where do you go and buy green slime? You go out to fucking Sherwin-Williams, say, I don't want your green paint. I want a bucket of green slime. Did they have that at Home Depot?
What the commentator said was Shane went under the ring to get the green slime. They didn't say green paint. They said green slime.
And then I also said that while, once again, Shane is my favorite McMahon, and he's a heck of a guy, but in the universe of logic, which has long since been penetrated by spaceships, but that a 50-something-year-old son of the billionaire owner, even if he is a badass jacked up in real life, shouldn't be pummeling and beating and wiping his feet on and dumping shit on the world's strongest wrestler, Braun Strowman, to 350 pounds, blah, 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 etc. Just that it shouldn't be that way. And somebody said, oh, well, Jim, you only watched the clip. The thing is, when Braun was running around the ring, Shane hit him with something. I don't care if Shane hit him with his goddamn Bentley. He shouldn't be able to fucking take over on Braun Strowman. But anyway, so what they did here was after they shot that angle, please tell me, and I'm not wishing injury on somebody, I've wished injury on a few people this morning watching this show. Is Shane's knee really hurt, or was that just an out-and-out bait and switch?
I thought it was a bait and switch just because what are the chances they actually were filming his training session in one of the practice rings, wherever they are, and it just so happened they captured the moment his knee gave out.
Oh, well, I didn't even see that. I just saw him walking out of the trainer's room with the ice pack on his fucking knee.
No, they showed him doing high knees, in a practice ring. They referred to it as a
God damn it. All
ring.
right. Then it's bait and switch. All right. See, well, sometimes when you zip through the but the pay-per-view now has commercials, actual commercials, not even spots for WWF shit, but just random commercials. So I was zipping through some of that too. When did that start?
You know, kind of when
they all gave up?
When they all gave up and Vince said, we need more money.
Anyway.
Record profits.
So Shane's knee is hurt, so the substitution for Shane McMahon against Braun Strowman in this hotly anticipated grudge match was Elias. Needless to say, my notes say, who gives a shit? And I fast-forwarded. I assume Braun Strowman won. I don't give a shit.
He did indeed win, and do you think they're setting up him and Shane at WrestleMania?
Well, why should we believe them?
Green slime match?
Why should we believe them? And why would Braun Strowman want a green slime match? Why wouldn't he just want to say, I'm going to gouge your eyeballs out and shove them up your anal orifice? And then I'm going to fucking throw the remains in a ditch. That's what Braun Strowman, this 6'7", 350-pound behemoth, or as Vince used to love to say, behemoth, wants a green slime match, or he was standing in the ring last week telling Shane that he'd been bullied all his life by people like you. What, residents of Greenwich, Connecticut? This giant bullied And now it might possibly be involved in a green slime. Or what is this? When you green slime somebody, what is the appropriate blow-off match stipulation? Do you go in where the loser gets green slimed? Well, then that seems like it's already been done. What the who are these people that they hire as writers that think that this is not even good wrestling? Because we passed the point where this doesn't resemble professional wrestling in any way, shape, or form, but just that it's a good fight to watch. It's a good movie fight scene. Next match. Seth Rollins and Shinsuke Nakamura. And you know what? Here's what really hurt my feelings about what they've done to the business. These guys are both very good. They're professional. They're athletes. They're well-trained. They're in shape. They can be serious. I'm sure both of them have been a lot of falderall since they've been in the WWE, but they can be serious. They didn't do anything stupid or illogical in this match. They were trying to work hard. I just don't care. I just don't care. Because especially with those fucking fake fan screens and the cartoon lights and the unicorn vomit visuals of this spectacle, whether there's fans in the building or fake fans at ringside on AEW or no fans in the building or fans on the screens or whatever, they're in this product as a whole, not just this company, but this entire product, wrestling. There is no sense of real animosity anymore in any company. No people you really believe in. No heel cheats, because since there's no rules, you couldn't tell if they're cheating anyway. So there's no baby faces, because you have to have sympathy or empathy. To have a baby face, you have to have sympathy or empathy for them. And you can't, because you know this is all bullshit. And it's guys going out and doing the same shit constantly. They're hurting themselves. Sometimes to have good matches and sometimes to have shitty matches, but they either precede or follow an Old Spice skit or a bait and switch or the immolation. That's a good word. The setting on fire, if you don't have time to Google it, of somebody, or having a ping pong ball gouged out of the eye socket. So the guys who try, their effort is wasted because nobody actually believes or cares in anybody or in any of this stuff. It's just guys starting to do stunts and doing stunts with each other till it's over with. And it just kind of goes by. What'd you think of this match?
I thought it was all right. I've always been a Nakamura fan. I'm not, Seth Rollins is one of these guys that I recognize that he's really talented. But the more I've seen of him in the last few years, the less I want to see of him. And his voice is like nails on a chalkboard. So I thought there were...
It does sound like some fights I've had with significant others.
Yeah,
his voice.
Very screechy. Very screechy. I thought it was all right. I like Nakamura. Haven't really liked him much in WWE, but these were two guys that are good workers, and I think they did the best they can do under these situations. Or circumstances.
Situations and circumstances. Consequences and repercussions, baby. Well, up next was a breath of fresh air in my mind, just a complete reversal of fortune, something we don't see often. A match with no disqualification where anything goes. Oh, God, no count out. Made sure to mention that one. Remember what I was just saying? I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. I don't know whether all this became meaningless because of matches like this or whether They just have matches like this because all of it became meaningless. But jury's out on Sheamus with me because he just looks disturbing. The state of him with the pale skin and the red hair, he's a disturbing looking man. But Drew McIntyre, great looking athlete, great fucking well-spoken guy, great, you would think, baby face, except they beat him numerous times after they tried to, get him over for a minute. And so it's been back and forth, but a guy like this does not benefit from an empty arena because he is neither a brilliant technical wrestler in the phase of a Daniel Bryan or a Cesaro. And he's also not a pure worker of the previous generation. He needs the people because he's doing good looking big man wrestling shit, but it needs people to be oohing and ahhing over it in an empty building, both these guys. And then they have the exact same match. I wrote, I could just use the notes from any other match of the last 5 years from any company. Here's how I started. They started out with 100 miles an hour with sloppy punches, did a running spot, duck, dodge, bump by the numbers in the ring, went out to the floor and stayed there forever. No count out. A little over 2 minutes in, Drew McIntyre had already cleared off the announce desk and started pulling out chairs and kendo sticks. They went back in the ring for a little while so they could beat each other with the kendo stick and gouge the kendo stick directly into each other's eyes with absolutely no blood from the face whatsoever, but plenty of welts on the back. I would rather get some fucking juice once than have some fucking idiot wearing me out with a kendo stick on my naked back. Where are our priorities, people? And then they go out in the arena and they're fighting between the fake fan screens. Did we not just see that? Was this a rerun, or did they do the same thing in somebody else's grudge match a couple months ago on one of these big shows?
I was thinking the same thing, and I can't remember which specific one. And obviously you can't blame WWE for something AEW does, and you can't blame AEW for something WWE does, but I had the same thought. Another no DQ Falls Count Anywhere match. Another one of these matches. We've seen...
Well, I didn't say it was just AEW was doing it.
Oh, no, I know.
Lazy booking knows no boundaries.
But my point is, I don't even remember what the match was that we saw in WWE where it had those stipulations. It had to be something, because I remember it, but I don't have any idea of what the details are. There was a time where a match built up to no DQ, and you would never forget it. For everything you didn't like about Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, I'm pretty sure that match will be memorable for years to come to AEW fans. It will stand out.
Oh, I remember it too.
Yeah, it'll stand out.
As distinctly as my first hernia surgery. I will remember it.
Will anyone remember Drew McIntyre and Sheamus in a no DQ match in the Thunderdome? I don't think so.
No. I'm hoping to forget it as quickly as possible. It might need alcohol to do. But anyway, these matches, especially in empty buildings, there's a reason why movie fight scenes aren't 25 minutes long. This is it. And finally, Sheamus gave Drew McIntyre Rico Constantino's old finish off the barricade through the announce desk. Boom. And then couldn't get him in the ring to pin him. And they actually piped in, "This is awesome," while he was just trying to get the dead carcass in the ring. People are saying, "This is awesome. Roll him in the ring. This is awesome. Roll him in the ring." So I fast forwarded to the next trick or stunt that they did, which was basically Drew McIntyre DDTing Sheamus on a piece of the desk and then hitting his kick. Because you got to, after you've DDT'd a guy, dropped him head first on a wooden piece of announce desk, you still need to hit your finish just to make sure. Because we want to make sure to uphold the integrity of a wrestling match by having a guy win with his finish. Fucking hell. It's not, I don't even dislike either one of these guys. I just dislike all the shit that they do because it's all the shit everybody else does, which is all the shit that everybody wants these people to do these days, apparently. Did I miss anything?
No, I didn't care at all. I didn't care at all. And they had a good pre-match package about the two guys in their history. Going back 20 years to Drew McIntyre, very, very skinny, and Sheamus kind of looking the same way he does now, but just less facial hair. That was good. But this match, not so much.
They can tell a great story in a package. Well, sometimes. Not all the time, as we'll talk about in a second. But then the bell rings. And I guess I understand now why people think that we're harder sometimes on AEW than we are on the WWE, because in a lot of these matches, there's nothing to make fun of besides the creative. And the things they have these guys doing. They're all well-trained athletes. They all are in shape. Most of them can work. And it's not just a train wreck amateur hour. They know how to put a show together, even if it's a bad show. They don't make goofy mistakes or pipe in Marvin Gaye over the top of the matches. I mean, the WWE is more professional, and the guys don't fall on their ass trying to do moves. So it's not as funny to fucking watch as AEW, where everybody's falling on their fucking ass. But the wrestling, if you can call it that, and the booking, you can't call it that. The writing, you can call it that, is still fucking stupid. It's just not as silly. So apparently, that's the attraction of AEW is, well, it's not going to be any good either, but at least there's more shit to laugh at. Is this what the appeal is? This is just bad and bland. Whereas that's bad and so amateurish, it's funny.
There's always someone when we say something about AEW, always, that will say, you guys support WWE, you guys are WWE marks. And then when we talk about WWE, someone will say, it happens to me, I don't think it'll happen to you. You're an AEW mark, you just love AEW. AEW has really, really bad moments, wrestle crap moments. Moments that would fit in with late era WCW and the worst of TNA.
There's a new Twitter account devoted to AEW botches where they're even playing clips that we don't see because we don't watch the YouTube stuff. It's horrendous.
That's not to say there isn't some good stuff in AEW, but the bad stuff is extraordinary. And typically you can watch it and laugh at it because it's so bad and it's so amateur and they are so insistent that it's great. With WWE, you don't get that joy out of the bad shit. The bad shit is just bad, and usually it's infuriatingly bad. And there was a great example, I'm sure, coming up on this show, because I know how I reacted. I can only imagine how you reacted. But I think that's what it is. It's just, WWE has completely lost its way. And not having the fans there, AEW is what AEW would be with fans there or without. I mean, they have those hired help at ringside. They have that hired help at ringside performing as fans. They're doing all right, I guess, all things considered, for what AEW wants. But AEW is the same it would be with fans or without fans. WWE, without any fans there, without fans having the ability to boo bad shit, is just really off the rails. They've lost the plot. And again, these writers, wherever they come from, that have never seen a wrestling match before, obviously, or know anything about it, have just taken this and run with it. And I don't know that by the time they do have fans back here shortly, WrestleMania or whatever, if they're not going to be in for a rude fucking surprise, well, not at WrestleMania. If you'll go still in the middle of a pandemic and you'll go to a fucking stadium, you're wanting to like the shit. But if they show up in goddamn, Pittsburgh sometime
and start doing some of this bullshit, they may be in for a rude awakening. Because, I mean, the writers, I understand why they think this. Well, no, I don't actually understand why they might think it'd be good. Because they're not wrestling fans. They don't know what wrestling is. They took this job to add to their resume until Vince runs them off because he's crazy and he'll make their lives a living hell. So they don't give a fuck about the wrestling aspect of it. But I don't know what human beings would think that this is good for a human being that didn't like wrestling. Anyway, and should we just go ahead and get it over with and talk about this goddamn thing?
Gotta pull the bandage off.
So they had somehow advertised that Alexa Bliss had challenged Randy Orton and they were going to, I don't know if they ever termed it a match or just it's a challenge. They're going to meet. What the fuck? I don't know. And that's where I mentioned they could do a package most of the time. As soon as I saw the package, it was preposterous. Can you imagine somebody, God, that's been in a coma for 30 years, that used to never miss a wrestling program, and they've been in a coma, and all of a sudden they wake up, and this is the first thing they see, burning people alive. An evil schoolgirl reciting nursery rhymes, and then burning people with flamethrowers. And Alexa Bliss hijacks the fan screens in the Thunderdome and makes Randy Orton puke black sludge on himself. And Orton on TV speaking to Orton, standing there looking at the TV. No wonder people hate this shit now. No wonder people don't watch this shit anymore. Who thought any of this would be good anything, much less wrestling? What is wrong with these people? The writers, the talent, the producers, the fucking Vince himself, anybody that doesn't just walk out in disgust. No wonder. Nobody wants to see this. And that's why nobody is seeing this shit. Wrestling. Nobody is watching anymore. Fucking hell, we're talking about shows with 750,000 viewers winning the fucking Wednesday Night War. And at first, during the package, I had because Randy Orton, one of my OVW guys, right? And he's a phenomenal worker. And he's been a fantastic talent. And I know how Randy is. He just wants his check. And he's way past the point of giving a shit about any of this, the wrestling business or any of these people. I'm sure that his calculating personality indicates if they want to pay him millions of dollars a year for very few days a month of acting like a fucking idiot and associating with idiots, he's taking this guy's check. But right here, is why wrestling is now a joke to everybody. And there's less than 2 million people watching the big show, and there's 750,000 idiots watching a school play on the other channel just because this shit's so bad. And then Randy Orton comes to the ring, gets up on the ropes, and pukes. I thought he just watched the package.
That wasn't puke. That was some kind of black slime.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Puking black. What is the thing now with slime? The green slime, the black slime. Who's behind this? Kabuki? Is it you, Kabuki? Are you a warrior or an errand boy?
One of these writers went and saw some old 92 stuff of Papa Shango and said, we should try this.
So, while Orton is at ringside puking, which is the reaction that we're all about to have, here comes this Alexa Bliss, all 4'10", 90 pounds of her, with the graphics, the Firefly Funhouse, the music, the skipping. I hate it all. I hate it all. If I had ever been at a wrestling event where something like this took place, I would have either walked out or committed physical assault. And then there was a referee there, but yet the referee disappeared at any moment that it was fortuitous for him to disappear. And obviously, since it was the WWE, there was no point where Randy Orton actually got his hands on Alexa Bliss in any kind of aggressive manner. But at the same place, Alexa Bliss never got her hands on Randy Orton either, because it was a special effects match part of the time. He goes for her, but suddenly the camera cuts and fire leaps up in front of Randy Orton and he jumps back, and then she laughs in a different shot. Maybe whoever did that film school bullshit in a warehouse for AEW is shooting some of this. And then Randy just runs 100 miles an hour at this little tiny little blonde girl who just pirouettes out of the way, and he posts himself and goes to the floor. And then this moved at a snail's pace where he's looking at her like he's all scared and creepy, and he's like he's buying any of this shit, which made Randy Orton, of course, then look like a complete befucking foon. And she's just backing away, and he's creeping up on her. Slowly I turn, step by step, inch by inch, minute by minute, hour by hour. And right when he had almost crept up on her, or maybe crapped up on her, then a lighting grid falls from the sky because she twinkled her nose like Samantha Stevens.
She looked up and she looked down, and some sort of poltergeist-like power caused the lighting grid to fall.
Right at Randy's feet. And he says, "Are you trying to kill me?" Yeah, kind of. I guess that's what they were going for there. And then nothing happened. And then I was trying to think, who thought Alexa Bliss should be a professional wrestler? How was that a good idea? Maybe she could have worked with little darling Dagmar back in the day. Then she shot another flare at him out of her fire-throwing bazooka gun. And then everything came to a halt again. And what I've just described here took, 5-6 minutes? Easily.
Yeah, about
Seemed
that.
like forever. But then Randy's standing there when suddenly a hand comes through the ring behind Randy and grabs him by the foot. And son of a gun, wouldn't you know who won the pony? The crispy critter from Cripple Creek has returned. The Fiend is back, to the cheers and adulation of absolutely no fucking body. Stupid bullshit. But now he's got a mask. He's been burned. So he's got a burn mask and a burned outfit. And he comes through the ring. And as he and Randy Orton are then having a fucking stare. Why does everybody have stare downs? Let me ask you a question. If you are a person, a real person, and something real is happening to you, you are in the moment that someone reaches up through the ring and grabs you by the foot. And when you turn around, you see that a person that you burned alive previously is coming up through the floor of the ring with malice aforethought and intent of injury in his eyes. Are you going to stand there and have a stare down with him, or are you going to jump out of the ring and assess this situation? See?
Yeah.
So they have the stare down, and Alexa Bliss pushes Randy Orton into the Fiend's finish. Alexa Bliss covers Randy Orton. A referee's arm appeared and counted 3 with the Fiend standing over Alexa Bliss covering Randy Orton. So now Alexa Bliss beat Randy Orton.
And apparently she upset Randy Orton's wife. Did you see that?
I did not.
Well, the way she straddled him when she pinned him, apparently Randy Orton's wife wasn't very happy about that and went on Twitter.
Well, that's the smallest worry that anybody had. I'm sure that's probably the only thing about that fucking abortion of a match Randy Orton enjoyed. But with all apologies to Mrs. Orton, there's bigger fish to fry going on here than whether your husband got humped or not in the finish. The fact is, your husband just got beat by a 100-pound girl in an obviously phony fucking bullshit match that was an abomination to pro wrestling. There's your lead story, Mrs. Orton. God damn it. So, there's a new rule, Brian. I call it the blissful Orton rule. Fuck everybody involved in this, and I've now written off Randy Orton.
Oh, come on. He's an OVW guy.
I will never watch another Randy Orton match. I'm just glad that Lawler's too old to get in the ring again, at least for the WWF, or they would put me off of him. But no, I know Randy likes the millions of dollars, but I have to be fair and consistent. And no, this is worse than the tooth and nail. This was worse than football field fuckery.
I agree.
This was probably, I can't think of what was worse than this.
I thought this was one of the worst things I've ever seen. It made me angry that I was watching this show. I don't know who the audience for Vince McMahon science fiction is. This was as bad a wrestling segment as I have ever seen. And I was pissed after this match. And I thought it was the end of the show. I forgot there was another match. So I was like, well, at least that's the end. I don't have to watch anymore. But then there was another match, and I watched it, and it made me even more mad because, as I'm sure we're about to talk about, that match was great. That match was, I could do it with a little less of the run-ins, but that match was a great example of how wrestling could work. A contest, you don't know where the finish is going to come from, not overdoing it with near falls. Really, really good. And
Daniel Bryan, you didn't mention the participants. Oh, yeah. Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns.
Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns, and man, Daniel Bryan still has it. He is fantastic. But it followed this. I'm lucky those guys didn't get swallowed up into the hole that flaming Bray Wyatt popped out of. That just went away. The ring crew must have come down there and fixed the ring really quick.
How did they get that fixed, I wonder, that quick?
I don't know. But I loved that match, and I couldn't enjoy it to the level I wanted to because I hated this so much. It's not even about Randy Orton to me. I've never been the biggest Randy Orton fan, but I can respect what his skills and talent are. But everything with Bray Wyatt, anything he's involved with, even if he's only there as a spirit and he's not physically there, anything he's involved with, go home heat to the max for me. There are wrestlers I've talked about before. When I see the Good Brothers, go home heat. I don't want to watch them. I zone out. But it doesn't make me want to throw the TV out the window. Bray Wyatt and
everything he's involved in.
Everything. The supernatural garbage. How does Vince McMahon think this is good? That's because Vince doesn't put things on the show if he doesn't think it's good. He thinks this is good. This is excruciatingly bad.
And he ain't coming up with all this shit by himself. A lot of people are giving this to him because he thinks it's good, instead of saying, no, I will not be a part of this. And this is not the Vince McMahon idea. Once again, I worked with this guy. I was in a car with him forever. Some days. I was in his house forever. Some days. If I had presented anything like this, he would have slapped me around and kicked me out. I don't understand what's happened here. But anyway, and as you said, Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns, I love Daniel Bryan as a worker. Roman Reigns, I have loved at his work with Paul Heyman. And I'm sure they had a wonderful match. And if I'd have bothered to watch after what that I just saw.
Oh, come on.
I'm sure I would have loved it. But no, I was not going to watch anything else. I turned this off. I deleted it as fast as possible so I'd never be tempted to go back and watch it again. And that's exactly, I would have to think that by the time that they got to the good match on the 3-hour program, that a lot of people had already seen, this is a fucking mistake, and fucking zoned out or tuned out. And if they stuck through it, well, then maybe they were rewarded with a good match, but I didn't want to see. And that's why you had called me and said, now, I'm not going to tell you what happened, but just after the Orton thing, there's another match and it's really good, so make sure you watch it.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And I said, okay.
You did.
And when you told me it was Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns, I said, okay, then I will look forward to that. By the time I got finished watching what they perpetrated on the screen in the alleged, I don't know what the fuck that was. I don't care. I don't want to see any more of anybody's matches. I turned the fucking thing off. I deleted it. I will never watch Randy Orton again. I've never watched Alexa Bliss before, and now I know why. I already don't want to see anything involving The Fiend. And I didn't want to see any more. And that's what I was talking about earlier in the program also. They penalize the people that go out and try to do it right because the viewer is either so disgusted, so zoned out, so apathetic about what's going on that they're not even paying attention anymore. And just because I bought the pay-per-view, just so I can have it on my big TV in front of my comfy couch, I know nobody else is paying for it these days, which is why I'm sure a lot of people had turned this thing off by that point. Why would you watch that?
I was close to turning things off. It just so happened I had it on mute and I was doing something on my computer and I looked up and they were getting ready for the next match and I had forgotten all about Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan because of, again, the Poltergeist match we just watched, which was the worst thing. Bray Wyatt may be the worst wrestler. I shouldn't even say the worst. He's the wrestler I despise the most in the business because anything he's involved with, including, like I said, he doesn't even have to be there. If it's just surrounding the world of The Fiend and Bray Wyatt, it is bad. And, you know, maybe there'd be some redeeming value if he was really good in the ring. If you could say, yeah, okay, he's wearing a Toxic Avenger mask, and yeah, okay, it's a little goofy, and I'm not into the supernatural shit, but at least, like, once the match starts, this guy can go. No, you can't even argue that.
No.
You can't even say this guy's good in the ring. He was a really good promo, and then that went overboard with all this supernatural, spooky shit that just isn't good. This is bad TV. This is horrible wrestling.
How do we know if he can work though? Because it's all the bullshit, getting hit by sledgehammers and being blown up and coming back.
Because we saw him before that. It wasn't always that. Remember, for a while he was like some kind of Cajun swamp master, and he had his brood of guys come out with him, Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, and it was very unique and very different. And it had really cool theme music, and people kind of got into it. And then
I wasn't watching then.
And then the bell would ring, and you'd be like, "Man, this guy sucks."
Oh, well, see, well then you didn't make me start watching this shit until after he was already teleporting himself into other dimensions in the Firefly Funhouse.
But I would have had the exact same reaction as you if I hadn't just by chance noticed that Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan was starting. And then I watched, and it was an exceptional match. It was great. It made me realize how much more I enjoy the match almost ending because of submissions than nonstop near falls. It creates a better match. Edge was the ringside enforcer. Eventually, since you didn't watch it, I'll tell you, Jey Uso ran in, interfered while the referee was down. They kind of telegraphed the referee bump, but that's another story. Then Edge got involved, and Edge hit Daniel Bryan because he wants to win the title, and who knows if it's going to be a three-way at WrestleMania or just Edge versus Roman Reigns, but this was a good piece of business. I really, really liked it. I would have liked it more if I wasn't already in a really bad mood because of Alexa Bliss versus Randy Orton. Listen, Alexa Bliss and Bray Wyatt, just go out to Hollywood. Just see if you can get any gigs out there doing a Rob Zombie movie or something. But please stop doing this. Please go away.
Yeah, this should not be done anymore. And yeah, well, I wish I'd have seen Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns. But maybe they'll ask to go on first next time so that they can be professional, have a match, entertain some people, and then get out of the way while the fucking writers take over the show and send it into the toilet.
Bad. Just really bad.
Speed trap.
WWE sucks so bad. We go off on AEW, and AEW has their problems, and they're significant. And it's not a good wrestling show, but it doesn't make me want to gouge my eyes out. It doesn't make me hate myself for watching it. WWE, I hate myself after watching it. It's really, really bad.
I really hate myself equally after watching both shows.
No, I don't think you can compare that. WWE is much worse than AEW.
Well, do you want wrestling insulted completely and utterly like Alexa Bliss and Randy Orton, or do you want it insulted just a little bit at a time, like every amateur, outlaw, untrained goof making elementary mistakes every time they take a breath? It's.
I prefer that. I prefer that.
Just the Chinese water torture rather than a right in the middle of the fucking face. All right. Well, I can see that then. And a lot of people now, after we've spent this time talking about this abysmal program, are going to say, well, they still like WWE better than, it's like,
I don't.
They don't listen.
I don't. I will say it right here. I like AEW better than WWE, but I think AEW kind of sucks too. But I like it better than the really, really awful show.
The big suckage. They don't listen anyway, because do you know what I had when I critiqued the legendary women's main event of Dr. Britt Baker and it's her goddamn name, Thunder Rosa. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, and everybody's, oh, well, he just hates women's wrestling. That's it. When the whole basis of my criticism, besides the fact that I said they did a good job of what they did, but I hate these kind of matches, whether men or women do them, the whole basis of my criticism was comparing that match to another women's match that I did love, that I was thrilled with, and thought was the best thing on WrestleMania. And I elaborated the reasons why I loved that match while didn't love this one, and why. And they basically said my criticism of a women's wrestling match in favor of another women's wrestling match that I loved meant that I hate all women's wrestling. Did I get that about right?
Yeah, someone actually emailed the drive-thru. I don't have it in front of me, but I saw it when I was going through emails before. And it said that if it was Terry Funk versus Jerry Lawler in that match, you would have raved about it if it was the exact same match.
No, I wouldn't have. Because they never fucking powerbombed each other in thumbtacks. Their shit looked real. They were having a fight and the furniture got in the way. They didn't assist each other in setting the furniture up so that they could assist each other in falling through it. There's a big difference. And whether it's men or women that do it, it's just that the only thing you see today is garbage matches with furniture or brawl matches where they go out at ringside over and over because that's all they do, but they haven't figured out how to do them or why to do them or when to do them. So therefore, no. I can honestly say that I would have blistered Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk also if they had stopped one of their incredible 5-star matches to get a bag of thumbtacks and spread it out in the middle of the ring and take turns taking bumps in it on purpose.
To set up a table and then go back to the match? You would have.
Yeah. It's fucking ridiculous. Everybody's lost the plot. Now, these fans that think somehow that this product is wrestling today remind me of basically of Shitstain, because he never absorbed the context of wrestling. He just superficially watched a bunch of guys on a screen yelling at each other, and every once in a while somebody'd get hit with a chair or a coconut. And that's what he absorbed. And that's all. And so now it's not, wow, that was a great match because they had that street fight movie fight scene in the context of this incredible one-take performance of a fight in front of thousands of people on all four sides with, no net. You get one take, it's live. You've got to be able to convince them. And instead it's,
let's get coconuts in every scene.
Yeah, let's get a bunch of knuckleheads out there setting up some fucking furniture and build some things in the ring so that we can take a big bump off the top of a ladder through it. Fucking idiots.
Well, Jim, coming out of this pay-per-view, maybe to remind yourself of this new rule, the blissful Orton rule, whatever you're calling it, perhaps you get a painting of Alexa Bliss on her swing set, doing all sorts of demonic magic tricks.
And ladies and gentlemen, the award for the worst segue.
Hey.
in the history of podcasting goes to the great Bryan Last. But I'll tell you what, folks, if you would like to have a painting of yourself sitting back in your recliner watching classic wrestling, well, you could get that at Paint Your Life, or you can get anything else and just drop the wrestling. Folks, we've been talking about them for so long. If you want to give your wife, your grandparents, your parents, your family members, your friends a perfect birthday gift, wedding gift, anniversary gift, whatever the case, give yourself something. Treat yourself. You deserve it. Whatever the case, the folks at paintyourlife.com can fix you up. You can get a professional hand-painted portrait created from any photo at an affordable price by a world-class artist, or combine pictures. We've mentioned this before. If you have family members that never actually were in the same place at the same time, or from different generations, you can get a family portrait, even if those people were never around each other at the same time. Or whether it's a beloved pet or a special place, whatever, you can send any picture or combination of pictures, and they will create a professional hand-painted portrait. And folks, right now, if you text DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, to 64,000, that's 64 and 3 zeros, DRIVE to 64,000, 20% off your painting at paintyourlife.com. That's right, text DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, to 64,000, and you'll get 20% off your painting and free shipping. They'll ship it to you for nothing. Did I mention DRIVE to 64,000? The folks at Paint Your Life will fix you up. Terms apply. Available at paintyourlife.com/terms.
Well, Jim, let's get some questions here on the show. This first one was sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Mark in Dryden. What does Jim think about Stephanie McMahon's comments about who will replace Vince? And I have an article here from...
I was about to say, what are Stephanie's comments about who will replace Vince?
This is an article from comicbook.com by Connor Casey. I'll read this. The question of what will happen once Vince McMahon steps down as WWE chairman and CEO has been on the minds of WWE fans for years. No kidding, especially lately.
Now be nice. Would you stop?
Many assume that the couple of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon will both step in to fill the role given their heavy involvement on WWE corporate side for over a decade. Stephanie McMahon was asked about that topic while on the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast over the weekend and put a damper on that fan theory. I don't think there will ever be a person-to-person replacement for Vince McMahon. He does too much. The landscape would look different however it shakes out, McMahon said. I do think a lot of the institutional knowledge is important, particularly with regards towards the core content. But it's also surrounding our business with strong, smart executives. And that's exactly what we have. So I do think it's the marriage of institutional knowledge, the incredible production value, the creation of talent IP and storylines, and really strong business executives to help us expand. I think it's a combination of things. It's really remarkable when you think about our history and what Vince accomplished. Think about what he's done. He took what was a regional business and had the vision to go around and create one organization, nationally and ultimately globally. My father saw the opportunity for syndication. He saw the opportunity for advertising. Ultimately, he saw the opportunity to really create something that had never risen to the level of popularity it had never been. That's a weird sentence.
Okay.
What are your thoughts?
Well, who knows who's transcribing these things?
Yeah, that's right. Comicbook.com.
Have you noticed everybody in a large corporation or publicly traded company masters the art of speaking forever without ever actually saying a goddamn thing? I will agree you can't replace Vince with one person because there's never going to be another Vince McMahon. But right now, even the Vince McMahon that exists, obviously, is at best spread too thin. I don't know what the fuck's going on up there. I've mentioned it a few times on this program. The things that I see, I can see the Vince McMahon that I knew being aghast over it airing on his television program. So Vince was an integral part of everything, even the tiny, minute stuff that would be done in the company that Vince wouldn't know about. He would have had somewhat of a system in place, or you would know, even if it wasn't something you needed to consult with Vince on, most of the time people knew not to do shit that Vince wouldn't like. So he was in everything, for good, bad, and indifferent, but for all those years, a lot of it was good because he did get bigger and expand and increase and blah, blah, blah. But this downhill side has been going on for a while. And I don't know. Everybody says, well, it's all Vince. It's all Vince. At some point, goddamn, is even the one guy in charge of the company to blame for everything here? Or did they just take and run with the fact that everything's the shits? And so I don't see how one person could replace Vince. I don't think Triple H wouldn't want to replace Vince otherwise than running the wrestling part of the company. I'm sure there's a lot of the things that Vince has done over the years that Triple H would be more than happy to stay away from. And also because you've got to remember that any other one person would be a normal human being. And we've joked about how for so many years Vince never fucking slept. Nobody else is going to do that. I'm sure now maybe that's what the problem is. At some point, Vince has had to start sleeping. Maybe that's when things started going downhill. I don't fucking know. But it also with Peacock and NBC and all this other stuff, no one person can run the company anymore. So Stephanie will probably have some department. Triple H will probably be over the wrestling department. They've hired executives to do most of the business, and then they'll probably all be trying to sell it for $5 billion, as we've talked about, as soon as Vince is gone. So that,
See, I disagree with you there. I think Vince is going to be the one to sell it.
Well, I'm saying if Vince is gone, if he's gone and they still own it, I thought that was the presumption that we're bearing up under. Who would replace Vince?
I think Vince,
because if Vince sells it, somebody's replacing Vince, whether they want it or not.
If Vince sold it today, let's say, I think you'd have Nick Khan running the business end. You'd have Triple H running the wrestling end. The question is, do you have an overall CEO that they both report into, or does someone like Nick Khan get elevated to that position? I think Nick Khan's there to sell the company. I absolutely believe that.
I can see that. And the thing is, you can't even say, well, it'll be the end of wrestling as we know it, because that horse already left the barn and the barn burned down as a result of the Fiend's pyromania. So what difference does it make? We've already lost the fucking fight. It's gone. So the question is it going to be shittier once Vince is gone under Nick Khan or corporate ownership to be determined, or is it just going to continue to be kind of as shitty?
That's what you don't know. Like Disney bought Marvel and they left a lot of the Marvel people alone. They tried to stay true to the Marvel vision with the movies, and it's been a major success. With George Lucas selling Lucasfilm to Disney, Disney made a lot of Star Wars fans happy, although some not so much, by going in and developing more Star Wars material. George Lucas isn't so happy because they're not doing things that were his vision. But Star Wars fans are a bit happier because they're getting Baby Yoda and they're getting, the Mandalorian, and they're getting all these different things. So that's the thing. If NBC Universal buys WWE, and if it's NBC, they're buying it strictly because it's a content producer, what's going to happen? I mean, we all assume Triple H. We assume that Vince will sell it with the idea that you got to take care of my kids, and I'm counting Triple H as one of them. What if it's not Triple H? What if some executive comes and he's the new CEO and he needs a wrestling person who has the institutional knowledge? Stephanie's right about that. You do need that. But what if that person starts talking to Johnny Ace and thinks this is the guy? You know what I mean? Like, what if he starts talking to the wrong person and thinking this is someone who really knows what they're talking about?
Well, then in that case, they'd be talking to Tony Khan. Because if they want somebody that they can go to that will really fucking wind them up for a good wrestling company, they need to go directly to Tony Khan and quit worrying about Vince McMahon or Triple H or Stephanie or all that stuff. He'll give them something. I just have no optimism whatsoever. I'm looking at, the WWE has run most of these fans off because there was no other option. And it's so fake. And the people who like fake wrestling but just don't like the evil empire, we know how many of them there are. There's 750,000, and they're watching the other show on Wednesday nights, which is abysmal. And there's almost no way now to do wrestling properly because everybody considers it a fucking joke. It would be like trying to do Hogan's Heroes as a drama. So I don't really think it matters who's running the thing by the time Vince is gone. Even if it's only a few years from now, by then, will anybody be watching?
What do you think of Stephanie calling her father Vince as opposed to my dad?
Oh, she does that all the time. Well, I mean, it's not like she doesn't also sometimes refer to him as my dad, but everybody says Vince, even family members.
Well, let's stay on the topic of Vince. Our next question sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Halvey in the state of Minnesota.
Who? What?
Halvey.
Halvey.
On a recent drive-thru, Jim mentioned that Vince Jr. held a personal grudge against Crockett Jr. and Vern Gagne. Jim explained why Vince Jr. held the grudge against Crockett, but not Vern. What was the personal issue between Vince McMahon and Vern Gagne?
Well, did I use that terminology, he held a personal grudge? Or it just seemed like that was the most delight he took?
I mean, we definitely talked about the idea that he did seem to take delight in crushing Crockett Jr. and Vern.
Yes. Well, I just more enjoyment then. It was not necessarily a grudge. It's just a byproduct with him. I don't know that Vince had a lot of grudges, but with Vern, it was a grudge. It
was a grudge. Absolutely.
Well, yeah. And also, but he got the idea for Hogan. And then because Hogan was working for Vern at the time and was his, top box office attraction, not only did he fuck Vern, but also when Hogan wanted to bring all the people that he was comfortable working with, David Schultz as an opponent, Mean Gene Okerlund, blah, 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 they decimated Vern's roster. He would have probably have done that just to get what he wanted anyway. But then, of course, Vern was not a shrinking violet and said a lot of things. So I'm sure that, it wasn't like Vince didn't give a fuck about poor old Don Owens in Portland. He didn't care about putting Don Owens out of business. And as we've mentioned, he didn't try to put Jerry Jarrett out of business because,
because neither one of them owned the Midwest.
Yeah, none of those territories were a threat or to him or a place that he wanted to take over or invade. So, he left, but he sodomized the territories that he wanted to get a foothold in or get their talent.
Well, the other thing is the story has always been that Vern and possibly even Greg kind of laughed off Vince in the summer of '83 when he offered to buy the AWA.
Oh, I'd forgot about that. Yeah, but everybody else would have too, because they were used to Vince Jr.'s the announcer for his dad. All of a sudden, hey, I want to buy your company you've been running for 30 years. What?
Yeah, and a lot of people, even in the summer of '83, were still unaware that he had purchased the company from Vince Sr. and the other partners in Capital Wrestling. Everyone didn't know that he owned the company yet.
Yeah. So, that's the thing is, at first, Vince did remember unkindly people who didn't take him seriously.
And maybe Vern was right, because if you look at who Vince made that offer to, notwithstanding Fritz, who didn't go for it, and, Vince couldn't do anything to hurt Fritz, that Fritz and his booking and his family issues didn't hurt that territory enough on its own.
Yeah.
But Vince, the partners in Capital Wrestling got paid, although when you look at the value of what that company was worth, he got a sweetheart deal with them. Tunney got paid and got set up for life or for the next 20 years. Stu got screwed. Mike LaBelle got screwed. Who's to say Vince doesn't go and offer Vern, who had the biggest territory of all those guys and had top-level talent, hey, I'm going to give you X amount of millions of dollars, and then he reneges on it after 6 months, after he gets everything he wants, including the TV and the wrestlers. Because that's what he did. He went there and he went after his TV, and he went after his top talent. He went after the producers. He went after the C-level commentators. He went after everyone. If you wanted a WWE deal, all you had to do is go work for the AWA.
I agree.
No extra insight. Okay, I got you.
No extra insight.
Well,
we've been down that road and back a few times. I know all the fucking pictures on the wall of the bathroom at that gas station.
Our next question sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from, what is the actual name here? Stellar Justin Lopez in Brooklyn.
Oh, well, that explains it.
Now, this is a topic that has come up several times recently, although there's been a recent change here. This first email was sent a day ago, and then there's an update. What's going on, Jim and Bryan? I discovered your show on YouTube at the start of the pandemic, and it's become my favorite weekly show. I look forward to it more than Raw, AEW, and SmackDown.
Well, that's saying you look forward to going to your dentist more than, but go ahead.
Last week, Andrade confirmed he asked for his release from WWE due to not being booked since October, where he lost a match on Raw to Keith Lee. He was denied his release and then went public on Twitter. Suspiciously, this weekend, his fiancée, Charlotte Flair, WWE's biggest female star, was removed from the WrestleMania poster.
Oh!
Do you guys see this as WWE being petty? Vince has been known not to be high on him due to him not mastering the English language. Paul Heyman, when in charge of Raw, pushed him, and Triple H was high on him in NXT. He's a former NXT champion. And then, like I said, there's an update. He got his release. Charlotte is still off the Mania-related posters and advertising. And I believe the update on his release, too, is there is no non-compete. He can go work wherever he wants tomorrow.
Well, now, wait a minute. If he can't speak English, how are he and Charlotte talking to each other?
I think he could speak English, but maybe not as well as, a wrestler born in America.
Not as well as the average Englishman. You don't have a simile to go to there.
Maybe that's why it works. They can't communicate with each other.
I've never met the guy. Have seen very little of him. He hasn't been presented as one of their top stars, from what I can tell, obviously, especially if they didn't book him the last 6 months. Did he have heat with the office, or are they just like, we just don't have anything for this guy to do? Do we know this?
I have not heard that he had heat. Obviously, he had been getting a nice size push. He was managed by Zelina Vega, who they did release. They enforced that non-compete, I believe.
Oh, that was over the twitching and twittering and all that stuff.
Yeah, that was over her wanting to keep her third-party deals and led to the Screen Actors Guild talking to her. But the only thing I had heard, as was kind of said here in the email,
just the English.
Well, just that he's one of these guys that all of a sudden Vince just decides he doesn't have it. Despite Triple H being high on him or anyone else, Vince decided this guy doesn't have it.
Well, I don't see then if I'm running a company and I've got buyer's remorse on somebody on the roster. Why did we sign that guy? Or we don't know what to do with this guy, or what? Okay, let him go. Give him his release. What difference does it make? They're past the point thinking that anybody is going to make a difference in AEW because they've seen what's going on there. It is what it is. And I don't know that anybody would say that Andrade would make a significant difference anyway, even if it was a good program. Why not? But why punish his Charlotte, who is a star, if this is what this is, or maybe they just fucked up and released an unapproved poster and they want to do something else. Who knows? We don't know yet, but I don't see why you would punish one of your top girls because a regular middle card at best guy that you've got 20 of that you didn't want to use wanted to get released. That doesn't make any sense to me, but but that's,
But Vince has been known to be petty. So, I mean, it's not unreasonable to think that all of a sudden Charlotte, who got screwed over in her feud with Lacey Evans because Lacey got pregnant, and now all of a sudden her fiance
good Lord,
is publicly declaring that he wants a release. And next thing you know, she's pulled off the posters. Now, she is filming a movie. Isn't she making a remake of Walking Tall?
Oh, God, as I read that, and that's another thing. As much as I like Charlotte, no, she looks nothing like Buford Pusser. Can they stop remaking established things and changing the fucking stories?
The one good thing is every time they remake Walking Tall, they get another wrestler to play Buford Pusser.
The only time that they made a movie about the actual Buford Pusser, Joe Don Baker, wasn't a wrestler.
That's right.
And then every time they remake it, they change the stories, but now it's a wrestler. Anyway, back to, I don't know. The whole thing sounds silly to me, but if Andre don't want to be there, I don't know why they'd want to keep him. And, poor Charlotte. But that's why they encourage their talent to date and fuck around and etc. instead of the age-old guys go find a rat. Because now that's a, horrible thing to do. But the girls used to come into the business with their significant other already. And then the guys stayed away. And most of the time that worked. Every once in a while, as we've talked about, there was the exception. But now that they're just encouraging their guys and girls to date so that the guys won't go out and get in trouble fucking around with rats, then they're going to have to expect all kinds of shit like this. And also, can you imagine how miserable it is when people break up and they're both still there in the locker room? What the fuck? I used to have plenty enough drama with a bunch of guys. I didn't need any kind of drama like that. You never had drama with the guys when they broke up with their favorite rat.
No, and of course you always get heat every time you use the term rat nowadays. It's kind of outdated, but...
And I've actually talked to a couple of my favorite rats in the last few years who said that they're pissed off that they couldn't just be left alone for following their favorite pastime, which was being rats.
Did Vince McMahon ever use the term rat in front of you?
Well, yes.
I mean, when you said the attitude used to be go find a rat, and you've talked in the past, Jim Barnett certainly had that attitude. Different wrestling promoters had that attitude. Did Vince McMahon have that attitude?
Well, no, he didn't come out and say, he didn't do like I did to Smoky Mountain, have a meeting with the baby faces because they weren't fucking enough of the girls and everybody was pissed. The heels were having to take up most of the slack there. But no, everybody in the wrestling business used the term rat, but it may be just a joke about somebody or an aside or, where's so-and-so? He's out feeding the rats some cheese or whatever. So it's not like I ever had any long dissertations with Vince McMahon about the subject of arena rats, but anybody who was ever in the fucking wrestling business has used that phrase on numerous occasions. It's a wrestling term.
Ron Fuller has said that when he went to Australia, Jim Barnett had something called the Fart Club, which was fuck a rat today.
Yes. And
he was encouraging
he would nominate during the team meetings, whether they be in the Omni or Australia or whatever, he would nominate one of the more entertaining promos in the locker room to give the rat report. And then, like old Sally's upset because Jimmy Golden couldn't stay overnight last week in Adelaide or whatever the case, right? Just entertainment.
You had to throw Jimmy Golden under the bus there.
Well, I'm just... Because I think Robert Fuller was one that used to be asked to give the rat report a lot because he was so fucking entertaining. But no, it's terminology, for heaven's sake. In rodeo, they call them buckle bunnies.
All right, well, let's move far away from this topic
Far
right
away
now.
from rodeo.
This next question sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Matt. There's a thread here. Surely Steve Austin and The Rock's comments carry some significant weight. Let's get Jimcornet in the Hall of Fame.
Who is Shirley?
Following on this, and apologies if this has already been asked, can we get Jim's thoughts on Steve Austin and The Rock endorsing Jimcornet and the Midnight Express as future inductees into the WWE Hall of Fame after commenting on an Instagram post?
Now what? So
apparently on Instagram, I'm clicking this because I'm unaware of it. Someone posted you and the Express in Mid-South Wrestling, and Steve Austin commented, Midnight Express and Cornette should be in at WWE Hall of Fame. And then, if this is really him, The Rock said, I co-signed this from the Rattlesnake. My favorite era in wrestling, Cornette and Midnight! 2 exclamation points.
Well, I appreciate that. If that is indeed The Rock's real account. But actually, I mean, goddamn, I hate to say that now I'm going to sound like a egotistical bastard, but Steve has told me in the past when speaking to him that he loved the Midnight Express's work. And The Rock has mentioned a number of times, besides the fact that that's why the goddamn TV show's on NBC right now, Young Rock, that was his favorite era of wrestling, you know, the 80s and the territories. And he was a fan of the Midnight Express. That's not secret. So I have no reason to believe that's not them commenting, and I appreciate it. And I'm a fan of both of theirs too. I think that probably me endorsing either one of them for the Hall of Fame is probably a little late at this point, or I would return the favor.
Well, you know, Jim, on the topic of Mid-South, I did want to ask you.
And let me say one more thing also, because Austin was teaming with Pillman when me and the Heavenly Bodies, Stan and Tom went back to WCW that brief period of time, and we got a chance to do that 8-man with them and everything. And I loved those guys. Austin and Pillman were as good of a heel team as there was in the business at that period of time. And, you know, Bryan had worked with the Midnight before, so he was like, hey, I'm glad to, you know, be working with you guys again, kind of. He didn't know Tom, but you know what I mean. And Steve was great at that, but you could tell he really fucking had it. So we were fans of theirs, as that they just didn't get a chance to team that long. Anyway, go ahead. What was your...
I wanted to ask you 2 questions about things that came up on other Arcadian Vanguard shows, ones that are not released yet, but will be in the next few weeks. But Mid-South Wrestling, November of 83, a dark, dark period of time for Mid-South. Some of those shows, there's one episode, again, if you listen to the Mid-South Television review podcast with me and Mike Mills, you'll hear this in a few weeks. It's Jim Ross, who's not yet Jim Ross, and he gets nervous on the air, and Buddy Nichols from Alexandria, Louisiana. Did you ever run into Buddy Nichols?
I'm trying to...
The sports director from the TV station in Alexandria.
Yes, that's okay. I think he came to the matches once or whatever. I remembered the name from living in Alexandria and probably seeing it on TV. Go ahead.
Well, really rough, because when you have matches that aren't the greatest on TV and you don't even have Bill Watts to talk about geopolitics and so different issues with society, it's not
just anything to cover up for its, you know, Josh Stroud against fucking Ricky Ferrara.
Josh Stroud, that's right. So at the end, actually, one of the matches was Hacksaw Higgins, or, you know, Larry Higgins versus Art Cruz. That was one of the matches on TV in November.
Art Cruz was prematurely gray when he was in his 20s.
Yeah, he looks a lot older than he was there. So on the show, though, at the very end, Jim Ross is about to interview the Road Warriors, because they were still trying to figure out what they were going to do at Mid-South. You could tell the talks with Jarrett had happened, but Bill wasn't still sure about the direction, where they were going to go, because they were teasing more with the Road Warriors that wouldn't happen. But one of the things that is said is at the end of the show, Jim Ross says next week, Steve Dr. Death Williams returns and the debut of Dennis Condrey, which made me think, oh, that's interesting. That means, you know, even though the Midnight Express were put together for Mid-South Wrestling, at that point in time, Bill Watts already had Condrey on the radar, but not necessarily you and Bobby Eaton.
Now, what was the date of this?
Hold on, I have it right here. I have my notes.
Because I have never, this is something I've never heard. I've never heard that.
It was the episode that aired November 19th, 1983. It was taped November 9th, 1983.
Okay, 2 weeks later was November 23rd. That was the night before Thanksgiving, and that was our first night there at Shreveport to do the first tapings as the Midnight Express. So, yes, 2 weeks beforehand, and as a matter of fact, I could find the exact date, but I'm thinking it was the last of October. The Watts came to the Mid-South Coliseum to look at guys. But like you said, they still hadn't figured out exactly what they wanted to do. And when you say the dark period of Mid-South, and a lot of people, younger fans and who didn't watch every week, and obviously everything on a weekly basis was not available on the network and et cetera, so you had to live it or get the videos later. But it was a situation where Ernie Ladd had been booking, and he was kind of burnt out. And the talent was not the best, and there wasn't an energy to the program and to the shows, and there were talented guys there, but they weren't in the right combinations, and the whole thing just needed a spark. And it was like that for the last maybe 4, 5, 6 months of '83, and it got really, when business got bad.
Well, October, November, it is apparent. I mean, real quick, here are the last two episodes that we just recorded. So November 12th, 1983, you get a bunch of recaps. The matches in the Irish McDill Boys Club. The Mid-South Tag Team Champions Butch Reed and Jim Neidhart versus George Weingroff and Randy Barber. Nikolai Volkov versus Crusher Darsow. Nikolai getting a big push at this period of time.
And Darsow would later on become a Russian sympathizer and join Nikolai. Yes.
But right now he was still in Daisy Dukes.
Yeah,
he was a friendly lumberjack.
The friendly lumberjack Crusher Darsow.
Road Warriors versus Mike Bond and Art Cruz. Mr. Wrestling 2 versus Paul Garner, the gangliest looking job guy I've ever seen.
Yeah, these were all Mike Jackson's guys from Alabama.
Jeff Sword versus Mike Jackson.
Well, there you go.
And Tony Torres versus John King. So
that was the standby match.
Those last two matches were not the typical matches in Mid-South. The week after, Reed and Neidhart versus Tony Torres and George Weingroff. Nikolai versus Mike Jackson and Randy Barber. TA and 2 for the first time teaming up versus, they weren't called the Devil's Duo, but Doug Vines and Jeff Sword.
Yeah.
Larry Higgins versus Art Cruz. Lanny Poffo versus John King. Crusher Darsow versus Paul Garner. And then 1 minute from Houston of Steve Williams defeating Bobby Duncombe. It's a really, really slow period. Even one of the weeks, Bill Watts goes silent during the matches. He has nothing to say.
But that's what was happening, is that he knew he needed a change. And as you mentioned, they prefaced things with the Road Warriors that ended up not happening, because I don't remember the Road Warriors coming back in 1984.
No, I don't remember them ever being back in 84.
And also, ICW had just closed up, the Poffos group. And Lanny got a spot down there, but that's when it was just an underneath spot. But that's when Jarrett had basically Angelo called on behalf of all of them. But they had a powwow with Jerry Jarrett, and he agreed to bring Savage in to do the angle with Lawler in Memphis that they'd been promoting on their show for 5 years. So now they got a chance to do it, just working for Jarrett. But there was talk that Lanny was trying to get Randy a spot in Mid-South. But as soon as Watts made the deal for Dundee to be the booker, then that would have been rendered immaterial. And I don't know which happened first here, but obviously Savage would not have come to Memphis if Dundee was still there, and Savage would not have come to Louisiana if Dundee was coming in to be the new booker. They would not have coexisted. So whether Lanny was trying to get Randy into Mid-South and then heard Dundee was going to be the new booker, and they gave up and started calling Jarrett because they knew they might be able to get in there now, or whatever. The point is, which came first, chicken or the egg? They weren't going to coexist, but that way it worked out forever. As soon as Dundee came in, a lot of those names that you read, and some of them were very nice people. George Weingroff was a wonderful kid, but they were gone. And he got up and down the card, whether it was, the Rock and Roll and the Midnight on Top or Buddy Landell or Terry Taylor, or whether it was, just even different and a little bit more exciting underneath talent that he brought in on to put in the preliminaries. So Dundee energized the Mid-South territory, and the fans were still, the lucky thing is the fans were still watching the TV. They hadn't given up on wrestling. It just had all of a sudden, the wrestling that they'd been enjoying for the last several years, just suddenly their favorites kind of left and it got kind of in, but they were still watching the TV. So then you had them when new people came in that they could get interested to, and you shot angles, people were still watching it. So they didn't need to hot shot to get the people back to the buildings. They just needed to change talent and have a different booking philosophy and more action. And then they got the people back into the buildings, and then you could work the finishes in those house show matches that would draw for the returns. So you just talked about October and November. We did the first TVs in Thanksgiving, but we all started Christmas night. By the end of February, first part of March, we were starting to do record houses.
Couple things. One is the ICW guys used Mid-South as a way to get back into mainstream wrestling. One after another. Bob Roop, One Man Gang, eventually Lanny Poffo, George Weingroff, Rip Rogers, the Devil's Duo, although they didn't really do too much after that. But they all went to Mid-South after ICW because Bill Watts didn't really care about, he wasn't even an NWA member at that period of time.
Yeah, they hadn't run opposition to him. They all goddamn knew better than that to try anything like that again. They were splintered. They didn't have any ability. They were coming with hat in hand to get a job from Watts, rather than he would look at them like, well, would these guys possibly try to run opposition to me? He knew that was completely out of the question, and they did too.
And Bob Orton Jr. also, I should have added to that list.
Yeah, and, with Orton and Roop and some guys like that, it was, they were top talent, so it wasn't odd for him to use them. But then by the point that they had, pretty much folded up in 83, he took a lot of the guys because it was just different underneath talent. Doug Vines and Jeff Sword weren't a bad tag team, but, they were only going to go so far.
But if it hadn't worked out with Jerry Jarrett, which I have to think was kind of in a way Bill Watts' last resort. Let me call Jerry Jarrett for help, because it appears he was doubling down on his relationship with Ole Anderson in the weeks and months before that. That's where the Road Warriors are there. That's why you had Georgia guys popping up with their belts on Mid-South Wrestling. Obviously,
well, and that's why he was using. Mike Jackson was the one who brought the job guys to Georgia for Ole, so he just brought them over to Louisiana for Watts. But I think he also saw that, Ole's business was not setting the world on fire at that point in 83 as well. And, when he came up, you could tell, obviously, he was sold on at least Dennis Condrey by that tease. But, within a week after that TV show was taped, we already had plane tickets. And so he had made maybe that TV taping was what made him decide, you know what, I got to go get these guys I just saw in Memphis, because this is the shits. And that may be what it was. Interesting.
Yeah, no, I saw that on the TV show, and I was like, I don't have any memory of this, where Jim Ross flat out announced a few times, next week, the debut of Dennis Condrey on the show. So obviously,
and things
are happening on the fly.
Think about this. It also makes sense if Watts was working with Ole in Georgia, and then he goes up and he brings Dundee in, because Jarrett has said flat out, he said, well, you can have these guys and that guy and this guy and the talent, but the guy you need is a new booker, and he's sitting right there, pointed Dundee. And that's what turned the whole thing around. But can you imagine Dundee had just been to fucking Georgia, and back that summer they did a whole loser leave town angle with Dundee so he could go book Georgia at the behest of Jerry Jarrett as a favor to Ole. And fucking Ole pulled the plug on it after 6 weeks. So then Dundee had to float around in the Tennessee territory. He could only work spot shows because he'd lost a loser leave town match in every town in the territory. And it took 4 months for him to work him back into where it wouldn't, just kill the stipulation, right? And they did record houses for those loser leaves with Lawler in every single fucking town. They did $40,000 in Lexington, sold out Louisville, sold out $46,000, 11,300 people in Memphis. So he goes, books Georgia for 6 weeks, get the plug pulled, comes back home to Nashville, has to work spot shows for 2 months. And then now he's going to be the new booker in Mid-South, and he's going to have to work with Ole and bring in. No wonder the Road Warriors didn't fucking come back for a year. He's probably like, fuck that. I'll bring my own guys in.
Another quick question from me about something that came up on an Arcadian Vanguard show that will be out in the future, reviewing some stuff from John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight early 1990. When you and Stan leave WCW, the NWA, everyone is saying you guys are basically waiting until May, and that's when Bobby will be free.
Yeah.
And then you guys could do stuff, including possibly Japan. Early 1991, it is said on the show that Bobby signs a new deal for 2 years for, I think, maybe $165,000, maybe in that range. Did you talk to him? Did he say, like, hey, they offered me a new deal and I'm going to sign it? This is right when Dusty returned.
Yeah, well, see that, luckily, that's what happened. See, here's the thing. They were beating us every night. I had to pull teeth the first time to get to midnight 125 apiece with Jim Herd. And then when we were ready to leave after the renewal in April 1990, everybody voted and overruled Herd. He had to renew our contract, so we got that renewal. I'm like, fuck. So Stan and I left. We told Bobby we'd got together. So don't worry, because our deals are up in May. We wanted to leave last year. Herd is certainly not going to want you around any more than he did all of us, next year. So, and I knew that I was already talking to Rick Rubin, and the plan was that they would be, instead of the Heavenly Bodies, it'd be the Midnight Express and Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Then the problem became that Dusty came back, and of course, as soon as he's the new booker and they're wanting to give the new booker everything he wants, well, Dusty Rhodes is not going to not sign Bobby Eaton. So they actually signed him and gave him a raise. And that's what, Bobby called me, corny. They offered me another deal and more money. I said, well, fucking take it. I ain't going to pay you $150,000 or whatever it was. And that's when I started, looking around for Stan's new partner. But and it ended up that Bobby had the last laugh in a way on him, because they tried to run us off, and finally it at least did with me and Stan, and broke up the team. Bobby Eaton ended up being the longest continuous running employee of that company during the Turner years. He was there when they bought it, and they didn't fucking let him go until, 1999 or possibly early 2000. So he was there continuously longer than ever, even when they signed him to contracts and he'd go down and do the syndicated TV in Florida once every 2 months, and otherwise you'd never even see him. They were paying him six figures because nobody wanted to be the one that did not sign. When you've got Bobby Eaton working for your wrestling promotion, nobody wanted to be the one not to fucking re-sign him.
So in early 91, when Dusty gets them to re-sign Bobby and give him a new 2-year deal, is this around the same period of time where he talks to you and tries to get you and Stan to come back?
Yes. Well, he asked if Stan was interested, but he was really talking to me, because at that point, he didn't even talk about putting the Midnight Express back together, because Herd was still there, and nobody wanted to fucking interact with Herd any more than they had to. And he knew that would probably be something that Herd would have a conniption fit about. But he wanted me to come back primarily to be an announcer, because they were still hung up on that. They still wanted me to do announcing instead of managing. So And actually, some people may not have heard this story first, but it's some point there when he got back and took the book at that point in 91. He called me because I was still at that point, I was still living in Charlotte. So I still had the same number. He called me and asked if I'd come to Atlanta. Nobody knew what I was doing to start setting up Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want people fucking it up, trying to get in first, getting in the way, whatever the case, right?
Who did know? For the record, I mean, I know Horner was involved with you when you started, Sandy Scott.
Well, hold on. That was
who knew, if anyone, that you were talking to Rick Rubin about starting your own thing?
Horner had to know because he was one of the people I didn't want to get in the way and muddy things up. He'd found some guy that had 40 grand. He was going to open up Knoxville. I'm like, God damn, come here. Let me tell you something. I smartened him up so he wouldn't let the guy spend his 40 grand and piss off a TV station. Sandy Scott, me, my wife, Rick Rubin and Cat Collins, and Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton. I'm trying to think.
Also, Stan and Bobby actually knew everything you were doing.
Yes, I was telling them in the car with our last 6 months at WCW. Goddamn, I'm reading the Atlas. Goddamn, Knoxville, look, Johnson City, boom, this and fucking yes, and blah, blah, blah. That's what every once in a while, when we'd be at a house show, Bobby would just blurt out, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Shut up, God damn it. And nobody else understood what the fuck, even in the match that we're talking about. Right? I said, don't kayfabe the name. Somebody will trademark something. But yeah, I think that was basically and then some people that we started talking to at first outside the business in terms of production. Well, what if we did this and that and the other thing and blah, blah, blah. But no, so what I told Dusty, getting back to that story too late, when Dusty called me, remember I had been doing the LPWA tapings, the Ladies Professional Wrestling Association tapings.
You had been doing that, and you were doing stuff in Memphis with the Fabulous Ones.
Well, we did that early in the year, and then that got cut off. The Gulf War. Remember, last week they had a question. Well, when Jarrett and Lawler would switch the booking duties, would they finish up the storylines, and how long would it take, and blah, blah, blah. So they could do that in one fucking night. Just beat the fucking heels. That's it. The Gulf War had been preempting all of our TVs, so we had more we wanted to do with that. But Jarrett was like, well, you guys got a guarantee. All right. Anyway, so we got that done. And then I was doing the LPWA tapings, which Joe Pedicino had called up. He was doing the play-by-play, wanted to know if I'd do the color for old Tor Berg, the promoter out of Minnesota. But we did them in Laughlin, Nevada, once a month, 4 TV shows. Okay, well, I'm really not working in 1991. I took most of the year off to set up Smoky Mountain Wrestling. So I made a few shots around the Carolinas for Bobby Fulton and a guy in Virginia. But really all that I was doing was the LPWA tapings because it was a nice payoff for one fucking weekend a month. And the rest of the time I was, doing mother shit. So I told Dusty, he said, well, what are you doing, kid? I said, well, I'm doing these LPWA tapings. And he started calling it the LPGA. You're doing the LPGA. But anyway, that was here's the thing. I love Dusty, and I didn't want to lie to Dusty, and I didn't lie to Dusty. I just omitted all the truth. He calls me to come down to Atlanta, comes to his office. He says, I'm the booker now. I want you to come back. You won't have to see Jim Hood. You won't have to talk to Jim Hood. You won't know Jim Hood's around. You'll deal with me. And that was tempting, especially for $150,000 a year, which is where I left off. So I certainly wasn't going to come back for any less. But I knew that eventually it wouldn't be true because Hurd could not stay away or stay out of it. And he never did until he left, a year and a half later, he didn't. And I didn't want Dusty to think that I didn't want to work with him. And I made the point of telling him, Dusty, I'd walk through hell with gasoline britches on for you. But I hate this fucking Jim Hurd. I hate this company. They've the Midnight was made to look like shit, and now we're fucking broke up. And he said, well, I want you to be an announcer, kid. I said, well, I don't want to do that. I wanted to be the manager of the Midnight Express. And I love you, Dusty. But I tell you what, so then I gave him a Heyman offer. Remember when Heyman said he'd be glad to come in and help Dixie Carter save TNA if only they gave him a piece of the company? And the reason he said that is because they knew they wouldn't give him a piece of the company, so therefore he could say I offered and they wouldn't give me my demands, so it's not my fault. I said, tell you what, Dusty. I said, since the people at the LPWA have been so good to me, and, you know, I'm friends with Joe Pedicino, and this promoter, he's a real nice guy, I'll be glad to come back if I can still do the LPWA tapings once a month, which I knew was an instant thing. And they were paying me $1,000 a taping plus a plane ticket for me and my wife at the time, both. That was it. What would that be today from $2,500? But the point is, it didn't mean that much to me, but I knew that when he went back to, they would never approve signing an announcer for their wrestling program, especially for that much money, that was also doing the LPWA. So that's how I was able to not just tell Dusty no, but still get out of it without telling him that I was working on my own fucking company and Jim Herd and WCW could go fuck themselves.
Was anything brought up about your contract? Because you were still under contract. You dared them to do something about it.
No, I wouldn't. No, because he sent me a release. He'd already said.
Oh, they did send you the release by that point when you talked to Dusty.
Oh, yeah, I've got it here in the. Yeah, because we left on October 30th. I had the release sometime by the first part of December. I'd have to go back way back in the files and find it at this point. And we're talking about talking to Dusty in spring or whatever of next year.
Was it that late? Because Dusty returned in January.
Well, then it was probably more like February or March. Whatever, it was a little while after Dusty had been back, but I already had the release at that point. Because here's the thing. As soon as when we walked out, went home, spent some time in Charlotte at home, and then I came up to, since I hadn't been off in so long, I came up to Louisville and was visiting my mom. And I can't remember how the phone call was instigated, whether it was booked in advance for that specific day or whatever, but I remember being in the downstairs bedroom here at the castle on the phone with Jim Herd while I was up here in Louisville, because they had sent me a letter saying that we will consider you in breach of your contract unless you show up at such and such place and such place after your misunderstanding with Ole Anderson, the booker. And I didn't show up. And somewhere or another, we'd set up the call with Herd. And I told him, I said, Jim, I have no intention of coming back to work for you. I don't want to come back to WCW, and I'm not going to. I said, now, you don't have to worry about me going to the WWF. And these are my God's honest exact words. On my mother's grave, I said this to Jim Herd. I'm not going to the WWF because I just got out of one company that's turned wrestling into a fucking cartoon joke, and I've got no inclination to go to another one. And I said, I have some things I want to do, which one of them was actually working in Memphis. I said, I've got some things that I want to do. I didn't tell him about Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I said, I'm going to do them whether I'm under contract to you or not. So you can send me a release and you can delineate that I am not allowed to go to the WWF in it if you want, but I'm going to do what I'm going to do because I'm fucking sick and fed up with hating the wrestling business. And that was my end. Well, we'll get your receipt. We'll get your release and we'll put that in it because I don't want to just that's what he had said. I don't want to just hand somebody to Vince. And I said, that's when I said that line. I got no fucking interest in going there because I just got out of this situation.
And by the way,
I'm getting back into wrestling
business.
The
way, in terms of handing people to Vince, that's exactly what he did with Sid, with Flair that year, 91.
Yeah, well,
the Road Warriors, he handed everyone to Vince.
Besides the precedent, remember the other precedent he didn't want to set? I've told this before. I called him one time from my hotel room and fucking somewhere on the road for WCW earlier that year. And I said, Jim, you don't want us around here. You're paying the boys $125,000 a piece, me $150,000 to do a job that you could put a local tag team with no manager in and fucking save the plane tickets. So why don't you just give us half of what you owe us on our contracts and we'll go home right now, save all that trance and everything. I don't want to start that precedent. Then just months after me and Stan walked out, he started that precedent with Jimmy Garvin by giving him like $180,000 out of a 2-year, $150,000 a year contract to go home.
Well, the precedent was actually get full contract and go home, the Iron Sheik rule.
Well, yeah, they just signed him and then sent him home because he was so fucking bad. They couldn't fucking have him on TV. But anyway, so that's how I got and then when he sent the release, it didn't say a word about you can't go to the WWF. So he couldn't even write a release right. But I worked the Memphis run with the Fabs. And see, Eddie Gilbert was booking then, and he'd already called me and actually just booked me. When I told him I was going to come home, I'd come down to the Gardens and fucking talk to him. So I watched TV that Saturday, and I was booked in Jeff Jarrett's corner. Shit, I got to go buy a suit.
Were you still there when Eddie went AWOL?
Well, that's the thing. Well, no, he didn't go AWOL that time. Or did he? I don't think he did. The point is,
he was booking and then he just disappeared. Right?
Okay, well,
no one could find him.
Well, I don't know whether they took the book before he disappeared and then he disappeared, or he disappeared and then they took the book, because I wasn't in the territory. We made the deal with Eddie. We came in and did a couple of shots as baby faces, and then I pitched the idea. I said, how about fucking Fabs turn on Lawler? And we go through Lawler and Dundee and Lawler and Jeff, and then we bring Fargo and a blah, blah, blah. Because business was horrible at that point in time. And Memphis, with $5,000 was the house in Memphis the Monday night before we started that program. And after about 6 weeks, we got it up to, I think, 12, which was still abysmal. But anyway, I pitched Eddie on it, and we started it. And then that's when Jerry Jarrett called me at home in Charlotte and said, well, Eddie's no longer our booker. I said, oh, shit. He said, so can you tell me what your program was supposed to be, what you've already started? I said, God damn, he didn't tell you. No, I don't know. So I laid the whole thing out for him. He loved it. He said, all right, we'll do it. So that was only after the first week. He kept doing it. About 6 weeks later, then he cut it off before we got to the part where we hurt Fargo. And then 2 weeks later, he comes back and finally we do the big blow off. Because the Gulf War, that's when they were bombing over there, and every Saturday they'd preempt the goddamn TVs. Half the TVs didn't fucking show. It was the Republicans had to start a war to ruin my big angle in Memphis, where I finally got to be a main eventer. That's the only territory I ever worked where I never got to be a consistent main eventer.
Well, anyway, for the record, the entire country supported that war.
But not on fucking Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. Well, Channel 5's supposed to be showing wrestling.
You can't pick what time the war
Did they have
happens.
to show it live? Couldn't they have showed clips on the fucking... They didn't preempt wrestling in Memphis for the World Series. But that's why we were so stunned. Guy Coffey was there in the fucking Channel 5 break room, and we're off the air for like 30 minutes, and it's going on time where the next program's going to be on. And I remember Guy Coffey saying, I'd never seen this happen before in this town. Wrestling, it'd been tornadoes. Wrestling wasn't World Series games, presidential elections. You didn't fucking preempt wrestling. Anyway. But yeah, so that was the whole thing. It was basically, from the time that I escaped from WCW, I was kayfabe setting up Smoky Mountain Wrestling, doing a couple of things or make a couple of extra dollars and just, fucking see what was going on around that. But I avoided, the Dusty's WCW offer by, misdirecting him rather than outright lying to him. But no, I didn't want to go back there because Dusty was still the booker, not the supposed executive vice president. Then I went back when Watts had the Herd job, and he was supposed to have complete say over everything. That's why I went back. And as soon as I found out that he didn't have complete say over everything when they edited our invasion of the show and didn't run it by him first, then we're going to do this match, and I'm gone again. And then it turned out Watts was gone before we did the match, but he had put our deal in writing and sent it to me. He called me that day. He said, I'm going to be gone by the time this pay-per-view happens. So I'm faxing the handshake deal that we made in writing so that they can't fuck you. And it's signed by me, and I still have the fucking position. And that's exactly what we did, or elsewise they would have fucked me on my 25 grand. Because then Ole was like, 25 grand? Because he's the one that took over. Why are we supposed to pay you guys 25 grand? I said, because, Ole, you just let fucking your wrestling company there, Turner Broadcasting, spend $50,000 for a midget to blow up a boat in a mini movie to promote a pay-per-view. So what I did was I conceived, booked the talent for, executed a television angle and 4 weeks of promotion leading up to a pay-per-view match, which I furnished you and which we performed. And you owe me $25,000 per Bill Watts. All right.
Well, for the record,
get your goddamn check.
For the record, the midget had yet to blow up the boat. He had only hung out in the dirty cafe for Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, and been in the White Castle of Fear with Vader.
Oh, that's right. It wasn't the midget blowing up the boat. It was the White Castle of Fear thing they spent $50 grand on.
The White Castle of Fear. Why did White Castle do that?
Because Vader loved them hamburgers, them little square. Fucking hell. But that's actually how I pitched that to Watts. When I went down, had a meeting, he called me and come down, let's do something. All right. I said, how about this? I said, it's conservatively, they spent 50 grand on that mini movie, right? That boy, he's, yeah. I said, I'll take half and I'll fucking give you the hottest babyface tag team that this company ever had. And it's almost most arch rivals, plus one, because then we had access to Bobby. And we'll shoot the angle and I'll furnish you tape from my company and we'll come down and we'll do the goddamn TVs to promote it and we'll have the fucking match on pay-per-view for half the money that they spent on a 3-minute mini movie. And he shook hands with me on it.
Well, Jim, we have some breaking news into the drive-thru.
Uh-oh.
I've just received a text message from handsome Gary Kamensak. Captain Ed George has passed away.
Oh, no. All right. Okay. I hate to hear that. Of course, handsome Gary Kamensak, one of the Detroit mainstays, Mancuso, Kamensak, and the whole rest of the gang from back in the old days. But Captain Ed George is the son of the Sheik, the original Sheik. And we've talked about many times, was integral in some of the famous Sheik territory stories of the later years in the late 70s.
The last time we spoke about Captain Ed George on the show, I believe, was after we had done some segment where we talked about the Sheik blading himself and at times just blading job guys. For Joel Goodhart, he just bladed everyone.
Yeah.
And Captain Ed George went crazy on Facebook about you. How dare you accuse his father of ever using a razor blade to cut?
But he was protecting the business.
I guess. And
one of the greatest wrestling stories I've ever heard involved Captain Ed George from Terry Funk. And for years, I thought it might be apocryphal. And then I asked Terry Funk about it, and he specifically said, no, that was the exact quote. But it was the late 70s, and the Sheik's territory was on its ass, and it was aging out. But the Sheik had been very close to Dory Sr. and had used to come to the Amarillo territory when he was the hottest heel in the business and worked for Dory Sr. when he could have been in New York, Los Angeles, wherever, but he's in Amarillo. And so the Funks go in and work a program with the Sheik and Abdullah the Butcher. And they're hot-shotting because they have to. It's at that point where they've lost the TV viewers. They've lost the people coming to the live shows. They got to do something shocking. They're blading arms and they're bleeding and they're having the wild chaos and the fire. And finally, they hot shot the thing up to where the big grudge tag team match in the Cobo of the first decent house they've drawn there in a few years. And they go out and they tear the fucking house down and what there is of it. And everybody's bleeding and they have the brawl and they're back in the locker room afterwards. And Dory and Terry and they're blowed up on the bench. And Terry said, I just said to Junior, I at least will get a goddamn decent payoff for this one, Junior. And just then, Captain Ed George, the Sheik's son, runs in and says, we've had a robbery. They've stolen the receipts at the box office. Well, goddamn, Junior. but Captain Ed George shares another famous second generation wrestling personalities a trait with them, because George Goulas only ever worked for his father and the Sheik, and Captain Ed George only ever worked for his father and Nick Goulas.
That's fascinating.
Because when Nick had lost his friends and Jarrett had split off, and the NWA didn't want anything to do with Nick, the only promoter that would help Nick was the Sheik. Yeah. And he'd send Bobo Brazil and Ripper Collins and himself, the guys that and himself and all the guys that he had in Detroit down to Tennessee to help Nick for that brief time. And George was such a pariah in wrestling circles that he got sent one time. He got to work in the Cobo Arena. I've seen the program, George Goulas on the program, but he never worked any other wrestling territory. As a matter of fact, Bobby Eaton told me this story, and I've seen a picture of them together in the Sam Houston Coliseum. At one point, Nick and Paul Bosch, there was some kind of business deal, and George and Bobby got to go to Houston and see a Houston Astros baseball game because George liked baseball too, and they went to the Coliseum, but they wouldn't let George wrestle on the show.
Wow.
Because, it was Houston, for fuck's sake. People wouldn't have got that at all. Who's this guy? But very interesting.
Well, Jim, like you said, that is a story that has gone around, and there's been different versions of it told throughout the years, but I think one thing everyone can agree on is that if Terry Funk had a good lawyer, perhaps he could have shut the Sheik down when he pulled that shit.
That's exactly right. If he had had a man who would fight for the rights of the little guy, the poor downtrodden wrestler just trying to make a living in the Cobo Arena, if he had had a man who could have gone to court and fought the evil bigwigs that were preventing him from making his payoff so he could go home and take care of his sick horse, I can only think of one man that could have made Terry Funk happy about his sick horse.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still to the rest.
I guess I shouldn't bother you about your segues. That was a segue for a veterinarian. But anyway, folks, if you need an attorney, look no further than the law offices of Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. The man, the consigliere of the cult of Cornette, will extricate you from any legal entanglements caused by people misrepresenting themselves, downtrodden you, trotting upon your rights, infringing upon your safety and the health and happiness of your family and immediate social circle. Stephen P. New is the champion of the little guy who will bring justice to the people who have had injustice thrust upon them. Did I phrase that properly, Bryan?
Somewhat, yes.
Well, thank you very much. He's a friend of the little guy, and he's a friend of wrestling. And he is not a friend of Old Spice or Alexa Bliss, for heaven's sake. He likes wrestling, but Stephen P. New.
Old Spice.
Old Spice. Where did they even get that? I didn't even know they still made Old Spice. Nevertheless, they still make courtrooms, and Stephen P. New is the undisputed master of those places. So if you have any problems, then if Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084 cannot help you, he will tell you where to go to receive said help. Because he was just telling me the other day that he's had to tell all kinds of the cult members where to go. And he can do it for you too, folks.
Well, Jim, let's get a few more questions before we wrap things up with a few songs. This is one I was not going to ask you about, and then we received a flood of emails about this. And
a flood?
I must admit, I didn't think it was real, but just trying to look up information about this while we're recording, it appears it actually was. But here's an email sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from no name actually attached to this.
Okay, so an anonymous person sent you a question that you weren't sure was real and you didn't know whether to ask me, but a ton of other people have mentioned it.
Earlier tonight, and this is Sunday the 21st, so yesterday as we're recording. Earlier tonight, Dave Meltzer jumped on his Twitter machine to defend any errors Kevin Kelly might do at a New Japan Pro Wrestling show. Any errors Kevin Kelly might do at a New Japan Pro Wrestling show before the show even took place. He didn't wait for the show to be over to start talking about it. Instead, he wished death on fans who crisis shit he's into. The grammar here is spectacular. What are Jim's thoughts on this? And
I don't know.
I have the tweet here.
Please help me.
If you are watching New Japan Pro Wrestling tonight, realize Kevin Kelly got up this morning, probably at 3 a.m. or so, to do a show, and on the same day is doing a show from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., so if by chance he stumbles over a word and you want to complain, please die.
What?
How is that? I can't believe that's real. But enough people have sent it in, unless it's like something that someone doctored up and has sent around. You could say whatever you want about Dave. You and I have talked about our differences in opinions, although he and I have gone back and forth a few times on Twitter. I'm not a fan of Dave on Twitter, but I've never seen him wish death to wrestling fans for complaining about something that hadn't happened yet.
It's a preemptive death strike. In case someone... First of all, I love Kevin Kelly. I've known Kevin Kelly for 25 years now, and he's a wonderful announcer. That's why he was the Ring of Honor announcer for so long, because I love his announcing. And he's very professional, does a very good job. And I don't even know if he would have said, well, I got to do 2 shows today, and then they're early in the morning. Fuck. He's in the wrestling business. I've been with him with some of those Ring of Honor shoots where we got 2 hours of sleep after a fucking 18-hour day and then did another goddamn afternoon pay-per-view at the Hammerstein Ballroom or whatever. He doesn't need a ton of sleep. We're all grown adults that have done this. So I'm not sure why that Dave would suddenly decide, well, if Kevin makes a mistake, he's tired. What? And you should die if you make fun of him for it. Is Kevin known as a fumble mouth these days? Has he had a fucking stroke?
I was about to say, he's the one commentator you never hear anyone complain about him making mistakes on the air. At least that I know of.
So who pissed in Dave's post toasties about Kevin Kelly?
Is it about Kevin Kelly or just, out of nowhere?
Or just about he's cranky today. I don't know.
I've seen him be condescending to everyone on Twitter, but I've never seen him, please die. It doesn't sound like a Dave.
And it's not like it's a stretch for Kevin Kelly to do these schedules or have done this in his 25 years in wrestling that suddenly, oh my God, look what they're doing to Kevin. They're trying to ruin his image. But no, he's a grown adult man and an announcer for a long time. He can handle it. And I'm sure he'll probably not be too broken up if somebody gets mad at him for mispronouncing the Orahara fucking Moonglow or whatever.
The Orahara Moonglow.
I don't fucking know. But Dave somebody needs to sit Dave down and say, maybe decaf or a nice ocean voyage or something.
Or just get off Twitter.
He doesn't. Did Dave's social skills used to be so abrasive? I remember him being more of a friendly person who got along with people and liked wrestling.
That's the one thing that's always confused me. He still is that guy for the most part, except on Twitter. Whether it's because it's a limited number of characters or I don't know what, but whether it's
or a limited amount of sense,
or whether it's a wrestling personality or an egg with no followers, he will just be combative with them. in a really odd manner. And I've heard from people who have said it changed the way they see Dave, and they've been Observer readers for years. I've heard that from a number of people. I've heard that from his friends, but there's Twitter Dave and then there's real Dave. But please die. I mean, that's I didn't believe it was real. I mean, I still kind of think there's a chance it can't be real. He deleted it, by the way. The story is he deleted it. That's why it's not there anymore.
I don't know. Well, hey, and for everybody saying, well, you're rude on Twitter. Yeah, and I'm consistent.
Yeah, that's right. You know what you're going to get. Yes.
You get the same thing pretty much anytime because I'm consistent. I'm not making this shit up.
Well, let's get another question here, Jim. This one sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Mike in Derbyshire, England. He says a lot of thanks here for the shows over the past year with the pandemic. We appreciate those kind words. In terms of my question, I discovered wrestling in the early 90s, although we could only get WWF at the time in the UK. I came into it around the time Jake Roberts and Randy Savage did their Cobra angle together, and was very quickly a big Macho Man fan. And even today, he and Bret Hart are arguably my favorite wrestlers. I do wonder, though, whether a prime years Randy Savage was a man of his time, or whether he'd had got over to the same kind of extent in any era, including today.
Oh, God. If Savage would have gotten over any time, maybe, I don't know, in the 40s, he would have probably been locked up somewhere. But just because society changed quite a bit, they probably would have said, what the fuck is this guy? He's on drugs of some description. But no, Savage, he was an incredible worker. He not just doing the moves, but he understood he could do shit that looked good, but he was also safe. He could work. He was cutting edge in some cases as far as his athleticism when he was 6 feet tall and 220 something or 30 pounds and ripped and still doing the fucking double sledge axe handle off the top to the floor. And, you know, as a matter of fact, he was a better in-ring wrestler the times when, you know, before anybody actually saw him in the WWF. But I mean, by that point, he had the promo and the gimmick and, you know, his style down, and he was a much more well-rounded personality and a main event money drawing guy. But you want to talk about fucking tearing the house down in the ring, those ICW matches where nobody ever saw him were fucking great. And the matches he had working for Nick Goulas with Bobby Eaton, they did a 90-minute Broadway at least once, maybe a couple of times. They did some 60s for the Mid-America title. And that's where Bobby and Savage stole shit from each other, you know, because both guys could do all that top rope shit. And whereas Savage nobody could ever get Bobby Eaton's knee, right? Nobody could ever do the knee drop. Savage couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. But Bobby used to tell me he used to try to do that thing that fucking Savage did where he would grab the guy by the head and run across the ring and jump over the top rope and spring the guy's neck on the rope, and he couldn't fucking get it. But they were, you know, he said they had great matches because they'd push each other. Nobody ever saw those. Nothing's on tape. But I think Savage, between the promo and the physique and the personality and the fact that not only could he work performing moves, but he could work mentally because he'd grown up in the wrestling business and, you know, second generation, he could have been a star in any territory. The reason why that it took so long was just because Angelo they were running Outlaw. So it took until if they hadn't decided to run their own company and then join up with Roop and Orton and those guys, you know, when they split off from Knoxville, then I'm sure Savage would have probably gone from Nashville working for Nick, probably over to Memphis to work for Jarrett, or maybe to Detroit for the Sheik because Nick and Sheik were close. And then he would have worked other territories. But since they started running ICW in early 1979 and didn't close it up until late 83, one of the best wrestlers in the world was Randy Savage, who was literally being seen by almost nobody. And the only reason he got hired then, we talked about it earlier in the show, was when they had to close down. They just couldn't run any farther, and that's when Angelo made the plea, hey, let's make money out of it. And Jarrett agreed to bring Savage in to work with Lawler. And from there, Jimmy Hart went first. And I've always heard this story. One of the stories was from Jimmy himself, but some people have other tellings of it. But I always heard that Jimmy volunteered that goddamn Randy Savage is one of the best wrestlers in the world, and he's down there in Memphis. Well, let's call him. And that's how they got Savage. So Savage literally went from being basically a prelim guy starting out, having a run on top for Nick Goulas, working as his own family's outlaw company champion for 4 years, a little run in Memphis, and straight to the WWF. That's just the way it happened. But he would have been a star anywhere. He could do everything.
You got to think he would have fit in today just because he was, in a lot of ways, a trendsetter, because he didn't really like calling his matches in the ring eventually. He just wanted to script everything out and plan out the matches.
Yeah.
Which is somewhat akin to what guys do today, where they plan out the entire match in the back.
But at the same point, he got him to go along with it because he was a big star in the big company. If he'd have been in the territories, I don't know if everybody would have gone along with that, but he could still do it the other way. I think the biggest problem would have probably the time that he spent working for his dad and them running their own company. They were outlaws in every sense of the word. And then most of the guys working there had some kind of personal habit at the time that would have been frowned upon in some of the other territories in one way or another. And, they got by with it. And, he probably would have had trouble with Bill Watts's, how can I say this? His strictness, his rules, and et cetera, in a territory like that. Because Savage was high strung. I never spent much time around him. I only got a chance to, I met him a few times, and then during the period of time where we coexisted in the WWF briefly in that 93, 94 period till he left when I just come in. But he was definitely highly strung and, had the ability to snap in certain circumstances. And that probably would have been exacerbated in a place like Mid-South or Calgary or anything like that. So who knows how it would have turned out. But on talent, he could have been a star in any territory.
Our next question, potentially our final question this week.
You keep saying that.
Sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Miguel in Turlock, California. With the current storyline of Omega being the champ and aligning with Impact president Don Callis, shouldn't Tony Khan be the one to make Cody able to challenge for the world title again? Cody is the best wrestler AEW has, and the storyline with him and Omega has history, as they both wanted to be the leader of the Elite. It would actually make sense for Tony Khan to become so desperate to get the world title back that he begs Cody to best Omega for him. This would also protect Cody's promise, as Khan is asking him to fight for the world title. Cody is the only Omega match I would even want to see at this point. What are your thoughts, Jim?
Well, I agree with most everything that he just wrote in that question/essay. I mean, here's the thing. Cody pulled a Dusty here in a positive way. He didn't want to be the champion because that would be, okay, here's one of the EVPs putting the title on himself, which then he put a secondary title on himself, but all the other ones have had the main titles. But also, he didn't want to be put in a position where he would lose constantly and not get the title. So they crafted a reason that he could lose once in a somewhat disputed fashion and not be able to challenge for the title again, so that all these other guys could he could be over there doing his secondary thing where he could do what he wanted and he could have the belt for a little while, and it's the other belt, the TV title and everything for a little while, and just let the other guys fuck up the world title situation. And then, of course, at some point, and that's as good as any reason, Tony Khan says, I got to get my belt off this idiot, for if nothing else, for ratings and business. And Tony Khan forces Cody to go for it. That would be a good reason. But it's the concept, the particular application here is, is current and fits this, but the concept is not new in wrestling. If you've got a top guy, but you don't want him to be the champion, but you also don't want him to lose in search of the title, you figure out a way like they did here where he's not allowed by stipulation of some kind to challenge for it. And then he can go off and do his own thing and the other guys can fight over the title. And then at some point you can come back and revisit it. So this concept is not revolutionary, and it's a smart way for Cody not to have to do several jobs in title matches if they're not going to put it on him, but he would still be challenging for it. So that was smart. Most of the things that you would in some way attach the word smart to in their presentation has been about Cody. Not everything, as we've seen, but he's been the most sensible of the bunch. And you've got to admit that, oh, great one, even though you're not a fan. If you're grading on the curve or you're going, well, okay, this is the farthest toward logic, it's usually Cody.
If you're going based on segments that are towards logic, yes. However, I disagree that I think it was a bad idea. Actually, you didn't even stipulate whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. You just talked about the actual idea being utilized.
I just said this is what they're doing.
I thought it was a bad idea having Cody before his first match with Jericho announcing that if he doesn't win the title, he doesn't get another title shot right when they got on TV. I don't even know if hot-shotting is the right word for that.
Well, you just abrupt.
It was, out of nowhere. Just all of a sudden, I thought that was a mistake. Other than the TNT title run, and this would have happened with the world title, immediately fans, because not every AEW fan likes Cody. There are kind of camps. There are AEW fans who love it all, but then there are fans that are more of the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega side. It's almost like the real life. They're more fans of Kenny and the Bucks than they are Cody.
Sounds like the locker room.
You should see some of those emails between Cody and Kenny. But anyway.
Oh.
I think that would happen with the TNT title.
You didn't sign an NDA, did you?
I've got nothing signed with anybody. I could say anything I know or anything I hear or anything anyone in that locker room says to me. I could say it anytime I want. I'm not necessarily going to, but you never know. Tune in.
Stephen P. News. Anyway.
Stephen P. News, you can rest. I didn't sign an NDA. Sorry, Mega. But anyway, here's what I'm saying. If Cody had gotten the world title, it would have been the same as when he got the TNT title. There would have been a section of the fans saying, you see, Cody had to give himself a belt. He had to make himself the world champion. This is all about serving his ego. And to an extent, they're right. Specifically, the stuff with Brandy is all about serving their egos. The baby announcement, the gender reveal. Do
you think he knows it's bullshit and nobody wants to see it, but he's just trying to make his wife happy?
I don't know. I think they're both social climbers. I think they both they're both ambitious people.
Social climbers? That's why he had to have that TNT TV title belt.
Well, no, that's why they had to announce the fucking baby thing on TV. That's why he announced that he wants to one day run for governor or whatever he said.
Oh, boy.
I think they're ambitious people, but they don't necessarily always grasp what the common man thinks of them, which is funny, considering, he's Dusty's son. But do you think, all things considered... Oh, thank you. Oh, I'll be all right. Try the veal. Do you think they should have had the belt on Cody at all? The world title? Considering he's the one doing the mainstream publicity, he's the one on conference calls, he's the one on that TNT, the big show, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Do you think because of all that, he should have had the belt or he didn't need the belt?
Well, no, he's not Andre yet. It's not like he doesn't need the belt. It would have made more sense for Cody, the most cosmetically pleasing, attractive, young, glib, also an EVP, but he's had mainstream exposure on the other program, but he wasn't beaten into complete powder recently. He's, somewhat reinvented. It would have made sense for him to be the top babyface and Jericho to be the top heel and them to trade it back and forth for the first year and then bring somebody into the mix that they have made on their television, like an Adam Page. Moxley, the wrestling fans, and once again, this doesn't make any difference anyway. The wrestling fans knew who he was, but he looks like hell to do mainstream, and he hasn't done acting. He's not on the game show. And let's not even start about Twinkle Toes. It's just a joke that, anybody would consider him the best wrestler in the world, and he didn't have any mainstream name or recognition. He's not the best fucking wrestler. He's a goddamn, I don't know whether he's a gymnastic ballet dancer or a ballet-like gymnast. But yes, I think for all of those things, in a perfect world, it would have been better if you had Cody and Jericho for the first year because they speak well. People know who they were. They've had experience in other companies in wrestling that people would know instead of just the niche, Japanese audience. Oh, Tokyo Dome. But the rest of the company has been such a goddamn fiasco anyway that, we're picking at very minute nits now as to whether that could have solved any, the first dozen of their bigger problems. So I don't care.
Who do you think should be the next champion to beat Omega? Adam Page or Cody?
Well, at this point, Page now is running underneath job guys down to the ice cream place on his lawnmower. So who gives a shit? That's, wasted opportunity. He could have been ready, but he's not. And, Cody who else would it be? Who else is going to be the next AEW World Champion?
Miro.
Without anybody repeating. Yeah, Marvelous Mark Miro. But seriously, without repeating, who's going to be the next champion and who's ready for it?
There aren't that many options that are good. They would have to be Cody or Adam Page.
Or Christian, because he can outwork anybody. Always brings his lunch. He's never late, never complains to human resources.
Works overtime, works the holidays, never takes off for a federal holiday, hasn't seen his kids in years.
Yeah.
Outworks everybody. And get ready for the Jimcornet short film contest coming up very, very soon, where you get to do short films inspired by scenes from the drive-thru and the experience. And
that's a great fucking idea.
I think we should do it.
They should do it. It's up to the listeners now.
It could only go haywire. It should be fantastic.
It can't miss. It'll be a fucking train wreck.
Well, with that, this train wreck has closed. Oops. There we go.
All clear.
And there's the final horn. Of course, you could hear the drive-thru and the experience each week when they debut the drive-thru every Tuesday and the experience every Saturday, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Get clips of both shows, full episodes, and the Omnibus collections on the official Jimcornet YouTube channel, approaching 200,000 subscribers. Be one of them today. Just go to YouTube and search for Jimcornet.
Hell, set up a couple of more accounts and be 3 of them today.
If you want to access classic episodes of the drive-thru and the experience, become a patron. Patreon.com/Cornette. For only $5 a month, you get access to the archives from the beginning in 2013. Right now, we are uploading shows from the summer of 2016. The most recent uploads include a great conversation with Dale Spear, Jim talking about Brock Lesnar's drug test failure, and other drug test problems he's had, or steroid mail problems he's had in the past. And we also have Jim's birthday celebration on the drive-thru in 2016, patreon.com /Cornette. You can follow Jim on Twitter at the Jimcornet. You can follow me on Twitter at Great Bryan Last. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Cornette's Collectibles at jimcornet.com. It's been so long since I've been able to say, open for business today. Get in the door and get t-shirts, action figures, autographed photos, restraining orders.
Well, hold on. The burger towels are down. The restraining orders are down. The Mid-Atlantic DVD sets are down. I just don't have time to make them anymore, folks. They may come back at some point, and the figures don't go on sale till this Friday. But otherwise, you nailed everything.
Jimcornet.com.
I've streamlined the products because I need more space.
The Drive-Thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until Saturday, on The Experience, and next week, right back here on the Drive-Thru, we'll see what other stupid stuff happens in the world of wrestling this week. But for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Bryan Last. Tally